Chapter 358. June Moxie didn't know that he had really outsmarted himself this time. The relationship between him and Venerable May wasn't like what he had imagined it to be. Not only was there enmity between them, but it was also the kind of enmity that wouldn't rest until one of them was dead. In fact, it was the kind of enmity that wouldn't let go even after 3 lifetimes. Right now, June Moxie was even somewhat proud of himself. Look, there are so many benefits to being handsome. This senior has taken a liking to me at first glance. Surname June? What's your name? Which family are you from? How old are you? This sentence was still squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth. If anyone else were to hear this, they would definitely think that he had taken a liking to this young man and wanted to introduce him to someone. This young man is June Moxie, from the Tianxiang City's June family. 18 this year, unmarried. I'm proficient in poetry, martial arts, and military strategy. I know a little bit about the 4 arts, and I've also studied the 100 schools of thought. June Moxie chuckled and put on a carefree and unrestrained appearance as he bragged about himself. He wanted to add another sentence, proficient in 8 foreign languages, but after thinking about it, he swallowed the words back down. This wasn't Earth after all. June Moxie. June Moxie. June Moxie. June Moxie. Venerable May's voice sounded like she was moaning and crying at the same time. In fact, her voice was getting louder and louder. In fact, it was getting louder and louder. In fact, it was so loud that it shook the mountains and valleys. June Moxie. June Moxie. Moxie. Sia. 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 The entire sky and the entire forest was filled with the sound of this name. At this moment, the name June Moxie had truly shaken the heavens and the earth. And it was a substantial shock. And it's me. May I know what advice Senior has for me? June Moxie was a little baffled and vaguely felt that something was wrong. Damn it, why does it sound like she hates me to the bone? I've never offended you. I'm sure I've never seen this Venerable May. The man in black, however, June Moxie still secretly raised his cultivation. He was prepared to immediately escape into the Hongjun Pagoda if the situation was the slightest bit off. Even if he had to expose his secret, he would not hesitate. Damn, this Venerable May is too powerful. Even Supreme Master Ju Tian was defeated by him with just one hand. With my small physique, I might not even be able to withstand a slap from him. Master Ju Tian would be fine after receiving such a huge slap to the face. That's because his skin is thick. But if I were to receive a slap to the face, my body might still be here. But I'm afraid that my head might fly back to Tianxiang City for the new year. What can I do for you? Venerable May repeated. He was suddenly at a loss. That's right, what should I do with him? 1 slap to death? Kill with a kick? But wouldn't that be too easy for him? Even if I let him die 1,000 times, it won't be enough to dispel the hatred in my heart. But what should I do? This brat's appearance is too weak to take a beating. Moreover, no matter what, this brat is my benefactor. I can mess with him. But isn't it a bit too much to kill him? Give me advice. Venerable May suddenly grabbed him. There was a distance of about 10 feet between them. This was also a distance that June Dashao felt was relatively safe. But Venerable May raised his hand, and June Moxie suddenly felt that his entire body couldn't move. There was a huge suction force in front of his body. Then, he was pulled into Venerable May's hand the next moment. Venerable May's entire body was still shrouded in the black robe. But, strangely, June Moxie actually smelled an elegant fragrance at this moment. It was extremely fragrant. He had never smelled such a fragrant fragrance in his entire life. He couldn't help but close his eyes and take a deep breath. Then, he opened his eyes and exclaimed, "It smells so good. This brat is still taking advantage of me." At this moment, Venerable May's mind turned several thoughts in succession. The most urgent thought was to strangle this brat to death. But, at this moment, as he held him in his hand and felt the abundant heaven and earth's spiritual energy, Venerable May was sure of one thing. The mysterious expert who could help Xian beasts advance, the person who broke into the Tian Fa forest, stole the sacred fruit, and said that he wanted to refine pills, was definitely related to this brat in front of him. Since he could appear in the Tian Fa forest on the same day as that expert, and also possess such a mystical heaven and earth spiritual energy, there was a great possibility that they were master and disciple. It wasn't that Venerable May didn't think that this brat was that mysterious expert. It was just that the mysterious expert's methods were too brilliant. And Jun Dashao's strength was a bit too trashy. If they hadn't appeared on the same day, and both of them possessed heaven and earth's spiritual energy, it would have been very difficult to link the two together. Venerable May tossed and turned in his thoughts. He didn't want to strangle this brat to death and let him off easy. But he also had some misgivings about spoiling the important matter. The Tian Fa Beast King's advancement was an important matter of the utmost importance. If he killed this brat, it would spoil the whole thing. Wouldn't he lose the big picture because of a small gain? It would have been fine if he had spoiled the whole thing. But he could tell from the extent of that mysterious expert's coercion that he didn't care. So, what about the other Beast Kings? Senior? Jun Moxie was keenly aware of the contradiction in this mysterious expert's heart. So, he couldn't help but call out in a probing manner. His voice hadn't even faded when he suddenly received a hot slap in the face. Then, his body felt light, and the people on the ground suddenly became smaller. It turned out that they had soared into the sky as if they were riding on a cloud. It turned out that Venerable May had thrown him several hundred feet into the air. Moreover, he was still rising like a rocket. Then, Venerable May jumped up and chased after him. His black robe rapidly enlarged in front of Jun Moxie's eyes. Then, the crisp sound of slaps resounded one after another. Venerable May was slapping him in midair. It seemed as if he was very happy. "I won't beat you to death. But I will torture you as much as I want. Anything is fine as long as I don't beat you to death. Fu *K. Are you sick? Why are you hitting me?" Jun Moxie angrily shook his head as he asked. But he had no choice but to shake his head. The situation wasn't in his favor. One slap after another was ruthlessly beating him in the face. So, he had no choice but to shake his head back and forth. The hitman Jun's mental fortitude was very strong. So, he was able to react in time. If it had been someone else, they would have been beaten senseless. The wind was very strong at high altitude, and Jun Moxie's words were almost incoherent. But what kind of person was Venerable May? So, he naturally understood what he was trying to say. "Bastard! I've already caught you, and you still dare to talk dirty. I'll teach you a lesson." Jun Moxie didn't say a word. He bit his lips and continued to slap Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie could clearly see that his opponent's eyes were flashing with excitement. It seemed as if he was taking endless pleasure in beating him up. Fu *K. He's a sadist. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Just you wait. I'll get my revenge if I ever get the chance. Jun Dashao's heart stirred. Then, he disappeared from the sky with a whooshing sound. This was the profound and unfathomable yin-yang escape technique. Even the great master Li Ju Tian wouldn't necessarily be able to escape unscathed if Venerable May were to lock onto him with her full concentration and concentration. Venerable May was in a good mood. But he didn't expect that he would slap Jun Moxie's face again. He couldn't help but feel puzzled as he sucked in the air with a pop. He looked around, but couldn't find Jun Moxie anywhere. "It's so strange. How did this kid escape from my hands? This kid's cultivation is only at the level of Yuxian. How did he escape? This is really strange." He had finally determined that Jun Moxie had escaped. So, Venerable May had vented a small part of his anger. But he didn't have a place to vent it. So, he slowly descended with a depressed and puzzled expression on his face. But there was only one question in his mind. How did he escape? This is too strange and bizarre. Isn't it unimaginable? He was puzzled. Meanwhile, Jun Moxie was cursing inside the Hong Jun pagoda. Jun Dashao was furious. This guy is such a bully. Did I offend you? You hit me the first time we met. Do I look so King annoying? Did I kill your father? Did I rape your wife? Did I jump into a well with your child? Or did I explode your chrysanthemum? What kind of deep hatred do you have for me? Is there a need to act like this? And you call yourself the #1 Beast King of Tianfa? Just you wait. I will definitely explode you when you come to beg me for help. This is really inexplicable. Jun Moxie touched his burning face and gnashed his teeth. He had never suffered such a loss in his 2 lifetimes. But he had been slapped today. The one who had slapped him was a top figure. If an ordinary person had been slapped by Venerable Mei, they might have felt honored. But Jun Moxie didn't think like that. Isn't your Xian cultivation a little more powerful? Motherf *Ker, watch me speed up my practice. I'll catch up with you as soon as possible, you sadist. If I don't beat your *SS into pieces, I won't be called Jun Moxie. The battle below had ended by this time. The 10 people of the Silver Blizzard City had formed a sword formation to protect Xiao Han and Mu Shuetong. They had managed to break out of the encirclement even though they were in a very difficult situation. In fact, their injuries weren't too serious either. In fact, they were the side that had suffered the lightest casualties in this battle. However, 2 of the 3 Xinxian experts of the Shui Hun Manor had died. Only one of them had managed to escape. But he was seriously injured. He had managed to escape because he had used a self-mutilating secret technique. So, his strength would have been greatly reduced even if he had been able to recover. So, it was inevitable that he would have fallen out of the Xinxian realm. As for the remaining 700 people below the Spirit Xian level, not a single one of them had survived. Even the dozen or so Sky Xian experts were no exception. On top of that, only a few lucky ones managed to escape from the various aristocratic families. The rest were completely annihilated. However, Jun Wu Yi's team had suffered the fewest casualties. Only 100 of their 300 men had died. So, they still had around 200 men left alive. Moreover, the leaders of the team, including Bailey Luoyun, hadn't suffered a single injury. Moreover, the Jade Xian experts hadn't suffered any injuries. However, they were too tired to fight. Dongfang Wenqing and the others were gasping for breath as they leaned on their swords. The Xian beasts in front of them weren't having an easy time either. They were sticking out their tongues, wagging their tails, and panting heavily. Even if it was just acting, it still required a lot of physical strength. The first round of the battle had officially come to an end. The Tianfa forest had won. Jun Wui frowned. He didn't feel the slightest bit of joy after surviving a great battle. Nor did he feel the joy of escaping from the deadly siege of the Xian beasts. His tiger-like eyes were full of exhaustion as he looked at the group of people on the hillside. His eyes were filled with deep worry. Chapter 359. In many cases, it wasn't a good thing to show off in front of others. In fact, it could even bring about a fatal disaster because of a moment's glory. Let's not talk about the distant past. Take Bailey Luoyun for example. If his talent wasn't so high, how could he have attracted the jealousy and fear of his entire clan? Even if he had been blinded by the great glory that would have been brought about in the long run, he would still have been eliminated as soon as possible. The tallest tree in the forest would be destroyed by the wind. Jun Wu Yi knew that his nephew was far more talented than Bailey Luoyun. So, his future achievements were bound to be even greater. But it was precisely because of this that he was even more worried. If there were people who were worried about Jun Moxie's future development, it was not impossible for them to eliminate this terrifying threat in the bud. Could it be that the previous disturbance was because of this? On the hillside. This battle, Tian Fa wins. As the witness, Lei Bao Yu announced the result of this battle in a straightforward manner. And this result was something that everyone had seen with their own eyes. Wait! A voice said with anger. Our side clearly still has the strength to fight, and not all of our people have died. How can you announce the victory of Tian Fa just like that? Junwui, you coward, you clearly still have the strength to fight. You're not dead yet, why don't you attack? The moment these idiotic words left his mouth, everyone's heart was filled with disdain. For someone to say such a thing, calling him an idiot would be too conservative. He was obviously a combination of a retard and a moron. The human allied forces had been scattered in all directions, and each of them had been fighting their own battles. So, they hadn't suffered any losses apart from a few spirit Xian and Sky Xian experts who had caused some casualties to the Xian beasts. So, their fighting strength had remained at around 80 to 90%. So, they were more than enough to deal with such a battle. Moreover, the human allied forces had been reduced to less than 300 people. So, how could they still have the face to say that they hadn't lost this battle? Not willing to admit defeat? Their skin was a little too thick, wasn't it? Everyone turned to look, only to see a person with a face full of blood and grime, looking at Junwui with a vicious look in his eyes. That person was Xiao Han. His meaning could not be clearer. As long as Junwui and the others were not dead, it would not be considered a defeat. He would not rest until Junwui was dead. Sima Zhao's intentions were clear to everyone. It was clear that they wanted to put Junwui to death. Most of the people knew about the case from back then, and they immediately understood that this kid's jealousy was soaring to the heavens, and he was lying through his teeth. He was purely making trouble out of nothing. The ones who escaped first were the ones who hid their tails between their legs like dogs, right? Since you want to fight to the death, why don't you return to the battlefield and show your heroic spirit? A deserter actually dares to shamelessly say that you haven't lost? A lazy voice mocked coldly. It was Jun Moxie, Jun Dashao, who was standing far away from Venerable Mei, rebuking him without restraint. Previously, when he faced Venerable Mei's abuse, he still had a lingering fear. Initially, he did not want to come out, but after hearing Xiao Han's extremely shameless words, he could not help but come out. Moreover, he could clearly feel that although Venerable Mei had abused him, it was obvious that he did not want to kill him, since his life was not in danger. Moreover, he had other more important objectives, so even if it was a risk, he had to come out. Venerable Mei looked at Jun Moxie's sudden appearance, and his eyes lit up. This kid was really mysterious. Just now, he disappeared out of the blue, and now he appeared out of nowhere. Moreover, he had completely escaped from the range of his divine sense. He was really not simple. Bastard, what are you talking about, you ignorant kid? Xiao Han was furious. What did I say? Didn't I say it clearly enough? Your Blizzard Silver City was the first to leave the battlefield before we lost. Desertion is a crime that should be punished with death. Jun Moxie snorted. Didn't you just say that the battle is not over? Since it's not over, why did all of you come back? You still have the face to say that you haven't lost? I really don't understand. How did the Blizzard Silver City raise a person like you? You're afraid of death and deserted, but you still dare to say that a hero who fought till the end is a coward. TSK, so funny that I don't want to laugh anymore. If you insist on what you said, Tian Fa's Xian beasts are still there. As long as you go up first, I guarantee that Tian Xiang's forces will immediately follow up, and no one will fall behind. Do you dare? Xiao Han was speechless. Go up now? Isn't that simply courting death? The Xian beasts are lenient towards you, but they don't treat me like that. Jun Moxie clicked his tongue twice, raised his head and asked, Fortunately, the elders of the Blizzard Silver City are here. Today, I would like to ask all the Xin Xian powerhouses and seniors, Is this the tradition of the Blizzard Silver City? Is this person the rising star of the Blizzard Silver City's Shao family? Especially the 10 Shin-Xians who deserted in the face of battle. As a member of the Allied army, can you only save the 2 Tian-Xians of the Blizzard Silver City with your strength? When you abandoned your comrades for your own safety and turned around to flee, did your faces ever turn red? Jun Moxie's words were sharp and unkind to the extreme, but what he said was the truth. There was simply nothing to refute. As for the Blizzard Silver City, there was nothing wrong with it. You didn't run away alone, but collectively betrayed and fled. Their escape had led to the complete collapse of the entire battle situation. After all, they were the strongest force in the Allied army, and they had committed such an atrocious act. Even if it wasn't a tradition, it was still a tradition. Who could refute it? This was only a tradition of the Blizzard Silver City's Shao family, and not the entire Blizzard Silver City. But today they were standing here, and they were representing the Blizzard Silver City. To put it bluntly, even if they let out a fart, it could be said that the Blizzard Silver City had let it out. The 3rd, 6th, and 9th elders, along with the 7 swords of the Blizzard Silver City, couldn't utter a single word in the face of a young man's accusation. Their movements were even more orderly, and their faces were burning with embarrassment. Even if they wanted to get angry, they couldn't get angry, and they didn't dare to say anything. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, they had chosen to strategically shift. But when their commander was still fighting, they had disappeared. This was clearly desertion. So, there was no room for explanation. What else could they say? To put it bluntly, if this kind of behavior were to occur on a real battlefield, fleeing in the face of battle would be a capital offense. That would have been beheaded. But it would have been a lenient punishment. Moreover, Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng were the 2 great masters of the previous generation. Moreover, these 2 were the representatives of the Hermitage. In fact, it was obvious that they were siding with Jun Moxie. The elders and even the most protective Shao Buyu were a little annoyed. They felt that his grandson, Shao Han, had lost a lot of face today. He should have been happy that he was lucky enough to keep his life. So, why did he have to come out and clamor? Would the Blizzard Silver City's top 10 experts have been the first to flee if it weren't for protecting you, boy? Now, you've been scolded by the opposite party. Not only that, but the Blizzard Silver City has also lost a lot of face in front of the world's heroes. It can't be said that their name would go down in infamy for 10,000 years. Speaking of shamelessness, the Jun family wants to talk about it with everyone. Jun Moxie passionately faced everyone. Then, he secretly glanced at Li Jutian. Then, he began to talk about his true purpose. The seniors of the 3 Holy Lands are here today. Their eyes are like torches as they bear witness to this battle. Moreover, countless heroes have gathered here because of the Xian beast. Everyone is watching. Even the Lord of Tian Fa, Venerable Mei, is here. Both sides have gathered here. I have a few questions that I would like to ask Great Master Li Jutian. Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng revealed a look of admiration in their eyes. This young man surnamed Jun was very young, but his Xian cultivation had already reached the peak of Yuxian's realm. Even they didn't have such a cultivation back then. In fact, it could be said that he was a genius among geniuses. However, it was rare that he was facing these legendary experts. In fact, he was neither servile nor overbearing. In fact, he had a natural demeanor. This was a matter of mental cultivation. This young man will become a great person in time. In fact, the world will have another great master in less than 30 years. At the same time, Jun Moxie's flattery had made the 2 great masters feel very comfortable. We were living a free and unfettered life in the Tianxiang city that day. And we were more than 5,000 kilometers away from here. It was reasonable to say that the southern Heaven City would have been wiped out. Even if the people of the Shuehun Manor had turned into evil spirits. What did it have to do with us? But Great Master Li Jutian had issued the summons. So, we disregarded our former enmity, and volunteered to go to the rescue. We led the army and traveled thousands of miles to help. What was the purpose of this? It was to assist the Shui Han Manor. It was to do our part as a part of humanity. It was for the sake of the Jianghu. It was for the sake of righteousness. Jun Moxie spoke in a loud voice. It seemed as if he was making a powerful lawsuit. His face was filled with awe-inspiring righteousness, but we didn't receive any kind greetings after we arrived here. Instead, we were ruthlessly suppressed and pushed aside. And these great masters of the Xin Xian Manor have finally decided to take revenge for their own selfishness. This battle concerns the safety of the entire continent. So, they set up the most despicable plot to frame us. They wanted to put us to death. Today's deployment of troops. I believe that the discerning Great Master Bu and the discerning Great Master Ru Lei, or those who don't know the inside story, can clearly see that there was something fishy and dirty about it. They had come from afar, and had come to help us in this battle. In fact, they had even helped us in our hour of need. How can we not treat them with disdain? I'm not afraid of the second Great Master or the third Great Master's retaliation in the presence of the Hermitage Master. So, I'm going to risk my life to ask you, where is your conscience? Where is the justice? Where is the morality? Can those with bigger fists disregard the justice of the world and the hearts of the people? If you're saying that you've made such a decision because of your personal grudges, then I'd like to ask another question. I believe that everyone knows that if Tian Fa wins this battle and enters the inner continent, it'll be a calamity for the common people. However, it was precisely such a crucial battle that had become a haunted place filled with crafty plots and conspiracies, and the one who's being framed is the commander of this battle. Then, what do the common people of the world count for in your eyes? You're all great masters. Xin Xian Manor, but do you still have any humanity? Do you still have any humanity? Could it be that in your hearts, there's nothing else but your own interests? Jun Moxie was getting more and more agitated as he spoke. He had been putting on a show to vent his anger. But, his words had made him angry. Great Master Li Ju Tian is also here. So, I'd like to ask you something. You don't care about the people who came to help you. So, why did you issue the Great Master's summon? Why didn't the Shui Han Manor resist the Xian beasts by itself if you had the guts? Why did you turn into a coward in the end? Why didn't you go and fight? Go and kill. Go and die a clean death. Then, the whole world will praise your heroic spirit. They will say that you're a great hero. But you didn't do that. You were afraid of death. So you asked for help. The Great Master's summon? The Xian continent recognizes it as an order that no one can violate? Bah! That's a call for help. Do you understand? Because you issued the Great Master's summon for yourself. You're greedy for life and afraid of death. There have been countless Great Masters in the Xian continent in the last 10,000 years. But, Li Ju Tian, you're the second Great Master who's afraid of death. But you can be said to be the first person in the entire universe. You may not be the last person in the future, but you're absolutely unprecedented. The most cowardly Great Master. Our forces are the weakest in this war. But we haven't retreated. So, aren't we the ones who have persisted until the end? The warriors of the great families haven't retreated either. They've spilled their blood on the ground. But the ones who have run away are the ones who started this war. The ones who issued the Great Master's summon are the people of the Shui Han Manor and the Silver Blizzard City. Moreover, they're the strongest ones. Do you have the face to stand in this world? Don't tell me that you don't feel any shame? Jun Moxie sneered. That's right. You've tried to frame my third uncle, but he hasn't died. And you're still saying that we haven't lost yet. Li Ju Tian, Xiao Han, I believe that the two of you can be called the two great masters of the universe from now on. Because no one can compare to the two of you in terms of shamelessness. You're worthy of being called the great master of shamelessness. I believe that no one will disagree. June Moxie had cursed them to his heart's content. Everyone's faces had turned deathly pale. There weren't many people present who were clean. All of them had participated in that shameless backroom deal. In fact, they were the fence-sitters who went with the flow. Li Ju Tian had been slapped by Venerable Mei in front of everyone's eyes. He hadn't been able to resist or struggle at all. So, he had lost his face a long time ago. So, he had suffered serious injuries after being taught a lesson by Venerable Mei. But, he didn't have the face to stand up. So, he simply lay down on the ground and pretended to be unconscious. He would have walked away if this had been any other time. That way, he wouldn't have had to suffer such unwarranted humiliation. It wasn't that he didn't want to retaliate, but his skills were inferior. So, how could he retaliate? The people of the Shui Hun Manor were taking care of him as he lay on the ground. But he had heard June Moxie's lengthy reprimand at this moment. His words had been spoken in a righteous manner. The most amazing thing was that June Moxie hadn't mentioned anything about the war. He hadn't mentioned why Tian Xian and the Earth Xian experts had died. And many of the Shun Xian experts had also died. So, why hadn't Jun Wui and the Yu Xian experts been defeated or killed? Instead, they had acted as victims. Then, they had started to reprimand the righteousness of justice. And they had scolded him in such a righteous manner that everyone present had felt ashamed of themselves. They hadn't dared to refute him. In fact, they had even started to sympathize with Jun Wui. Lei Bao Yu and Bu Kuang Feng were included among them, these two senior supreme martial artists. They had heard June Moxie say, Li Ju Tian, Xiao Han, the two of you can be called the two great masters of the universe. No one can compare to the two of you in terms of shamelessness. You're worthy of being called the great master of shamelessness. I believe that no one will disagree. Li Ju Tian couldn't keep up his act any longer. His chest issued a strange sound. Then, he suddenly sat up with a flushed face. He straightened his body and pointed at June Moxie. His finger trembled as he cursed angrily, "Ignorant brat! You puff!" He suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Scarlet! The dignified second great master had been scolded by June Moxie to the point of vomiting blood. Li Ju Tian had been seriously injured. His internal injuries were especially serious. Venerable Mei had punched and kicked him in a fit of rage. But he hadn't faked it. In fact, he hadn't been afraid that his punches hadn't hit his flesh. Li Ju Tian had relied on his exquisite Xian Qi to protect his internal organs. So, he hadn't been beaten to death on the spot. This was something to be proud of. After all, he was the #1 beast king of Tianfa. He was at the pinnacle of the universe. He had been beaten like a sandbag by his opponent. Moreover, his movements had been restrained and he couldn't fight back. His bones had been fractured, and his internal organs had been severely injured. Of course, even if he was so heavily injured, he could still kill Jun Mo Xie in the blink of an eye if he went all out. However, he couldn't. And he didn't dare to do so. That was because June Moxie had Solitary Eagle by his side. Li Ju Tian wouldn't have been afraid in ordinary times. In fact, he was confident that he could deal with Solitary Eagle. But he was worried that Solitary Eagle would take advantage of this opportunity to deal with him. Furthermore, the people from the elusive land of immortals were here as well. Who was right and who was wrong? How could they not interfere? Even if none of this existed, the #1 Xian Beast King was still here. Li Ju Tian could have easily killed his opponent. But he didn't dare to do so. Moreover, he had to endure the berserk curses of his opponent. Li Ju Tian had choked on his blood. And the reason why Li Ju Tian couldn't spit blood was also the reason why June Moxie had dared to lash out and curse him in front of the second great master. As for the future, Li Ju Tian probably wouldn't have a future. That was because June Moxie's murderous intention had already stirred in his heart. Li Ju Tian was in a much more dangerous situation than the Silver Blizzard City. That was because the Silver Blizzard City was holding him back. So, they wouldn't dare to act brazenly. However, Li Ju Tian was different. That old man was willing to do anything for his son. He acted without scruples. Moreover, he was very despicable and shameless. Jun Moxie wouldn't allow such a calamity to continue to exist. In all fairness, Jun Mo-sie wouldn't necessarily be able to take Li Ju Tian's life even if all the bones in his body were to be broken with Jun Mo-sie's current cultivation. So, how could he kill him? In fact, Jun Moxie already had a plan in mind. Jun Moxie had a trump card in his hand ever since he had entered the second layer of the Hong Jun Pagoda. But he had never revealed it to anyone. That was the flame of primal chaos. That pitch-black flame was the source of the world's flames. It possessed the terrifying ability to burn everything. Li Ju Tian was only an ordinary person. Even a great principal golden immortal would have perished under the burning of the flame of primal chaos. However, Jun Moxie wasn't able to fully control the flame of primal chaos. This was the reason why he didn't dare to use it. Otherwise, wouldn't he have been able to exterminate anyone? In fact, Jun Mo-sie's ability was more than enough to control the flame of primal chaos from the bottom of the cauldron. But, if he wanted to move the flame of primal chaos out of the Hong Jun Pagoda, and then launch it from his own body, it would be extremely taxing on his body. In fact, the slightest bit of carelessness could burn him to ashes. Even if he were to suffer a backlash from the spirit qi in his body, it would still be a serious injury. Moreover, his mind would be damaged. However, what Jun Moxie didn't know was that his mind was the so-called primordial spirit. Primordial spirit damage couldn't be healed even after a long period of recuperation. Otherwise, the consequences would be very serious. So, it couldn't be used unless it was absolutely necessary. However, Jun Moxie had no other choice. This was the most critical moment of his life. Venerable Mei had already broken many of Li Ju Tian's bones. Moreover, his internal injuries were also quite serious. This was the weakest moment of the second great master's life. Moreover, he was the most vulnerable person in his life. Therefore, he was the most vulnerable person to be killed. So, it was very likely that Jun Moxie and the Jun family would be the ones to suffer if Li Ju Tian was allowed to recover. Li Ju Tian wouldn't have let Jun Wui and the Jun family off even if Jun Moxie hadn't gone all out and cursed Li Ju Tian. Almost 1/3 of the Shuehun Manor's strength had been lost. In fact, 3 of the Shunxian experts had been killed. And this was all because of Jun Wui. And Li Ju Tian had been beaten up by Venerable Mei because of Jun Moxie. Jun Moxie couldn't be blamed at that time. But, he was the cause of the incident. Especially the second time. Jun Moxie was the perfect target to vent his anger on. Li Ju Tian was a vengeful person. So, how could he let this uncle and nephew go? I can't beat Venerable Mei. But, can I beat Jun Wui and his nephew? Li Ju Tian didn't care about the cause of this matter. Therefore, Jun Moxie had no other choice. So, he decided to take the risk. I must kill Li Ju Tian. I must kill Li Ju Tian. Li Ju Tian had been forced into a dead end by Venerable Mei. And Jun Moxie had also been forced into a dead end at the same time. Li Ju Tian wouldn't die. So, the Jun family would be destroyed. There was no better solution than to kill Li Ju Tian. Therefore, in the eyes of others, Jun Mo-sie's outburst of cursing was extremely audacious. He had actually mentioned the second great master's name over and over again, and was truly reckless. However, Jun Mo-sie was thinking, Li Ju Tian had just received the heaviest injury of his life. Moreover, he had just suffered the most severe humiliation since the beginning of the world's history. So, it was obvious that he was in a state of agitation at this time. In fact, it was difficult for him to control his emotions. Moreover, his temperament was extremely vicious. So, it was even more difficult for him to control his mind. Therefore, the more ruthless he cursed at Li Ju Tian, the better it would be. And Li Ju Tian's words would provoke him even more. In other words, he would infuriate him even more. It would be best if he could infuriate this old bastard to death. In fact, that would be the most ideal outcome. But, he would make Li Ju Tian's internal injuries worsen even if he didn't die from anger. And that would give him an advantage in the future. Recommended Urban Fantasy Book. With Super Magic Pen, Book Number 1648424. If you like this type of book, please help me collect it. Chapter 360. Jun Mo Xie's guess was right. Jun Mo Xie's curses were more effective in Li Ju Tian's ears than if Venerable Mei had punched him 3 times. His injuries had already been under control and hadn't worsened. But, his mind had been agitated, and his Xian Qi had been stimulated. His internal organs had been damaged, and he had vomited blood. How did his injuries just worsen by a little? Jun Moxie's cold eyes Lengling looked at Li Ju Tian as he madly vomited blood. He couldn't help but feel pleased in his heart. Old man, this is only the beginning. I haven't let you experience the joy of seeing your son die. Just wait for a while, and I'll show you the corpse of your only son in front of you. Let's see if you won't vomit blood then. Li Ting Yun, this young master has already told you that you'll face a bloody calamity. And you can't avoid it. But you didn't believe me. Just wait. This young master will prove it to you. Today is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I won't be called Jun Moxie if I don't kill you. It could be said that Jun Mo Xie had employed the most brilliant psychological tactics to deal with Li Ju Tian's series of schemes. He had grasped the weaknesses of Li Ju Tian's character, and had grasped his weakness. He had slowly advanced step by step. He had seized the opportunity of Li Ju Tian's unstable state of mind after he had been seriously injured. And he had used his words to break through the enemy's psychological defenses. And he had finally achieved his goal. Jun Mo Xie had come up with a brilliant idea when he had seen Venerable Mei beating up Li Ju Tian. So, he had come up with a good method to defeat the enemy. His target had been Li Ju Tian since the beginning of his curses. In fact, the Silver Blizzard City had only been incidental. Jun Moxie would have looked for a reason to curse him even if Xiao Han hadn't jumped out and said those words. Of course, that idiot Xiao Han had cooperated with Jun Mo Xie by saying that he hadn't lost yet. And this had given Jun Mo Xie even more reason to believe that he had lost. At the same time, Jun Moxie had a vicious thought in his mind. I won't let anyone who has participated in the framing of the Jun family off. No matter who you are, no matter if you are forced, no matter if you have difficulties, if you do it, you will have to bear my wrath, the wrath of the evil monarch. Today's matter, although we lost this battle, it wasn't without reason. Regarding General Jun's misfortune, we 2 brothers are extremely sympathetic. Fortunately, General Jun has great fortune and life, and did not cause an eternally regrettable incident. This is truly something to rejoice over. Bu Kuangfeng had a very straightforward temperament. Moreover, he had witnessed this fight from the beginning to the end. So, he was somewhat dissatisfied in his heart. Most importantly, he was very dissatisfied with Li Ju Tian and the Silver Blizzard City. This was because he had witnessed a tragic hero who came from afar to help, but was framed by the people he wanted to help. However, for the sake of his own beliefs and duty, he chose to fight with an indomitable will. Even if he died, he would not regret it. Even in the face of certain death, he still did his best and did his best in what was within his responsibility. Although no one supported his decision and no one obeyed his orders due to fear of the conspirators' despotic power, he had a clear conscience regardless of whether he lived or died. Even the people who had framed him had chosen to use their military skills for the sake of the overall situation of the war. So, he had chosen to protect them as long as they were part of his army. Everyone with discerning eyes could see that Jun Wu Yi's troops would have been defeated if they had followed Jun Wu Yi's arrangements. But they wouldn't have been so miserable. However, this mistake couldn't be blamed on Jun Wu. He knew that this was a trap. But a soldier was a soldier, and a commander was a commander. Jun Wu had fought for the sake of the continent, and not for the sake of his own dignity. Such a soldier was very stupid. But his stupidity was admirable. It was admirable. Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng had come as witnesses. But the elusive land of the immortals and Li Ju Tian had a good relationship. Therefore, they had stood on Li Ju Tian's side when they had arrived. They had also stood on the side of the continent. However, they had witnessed some things with their own eyes after they had arrived. And they hadn't even realized that they had deviated from their original positions. Jun Wu hadn't done anything wrong. Moreover, most people sympathized with the weak. Moreover, Hermitage had always been a righteous messenger. Therefore, the two of them had subconsciously stood on Jun Wu's side. It was only temporary. But it was enough for now. A tragic hero was always easy to be admired. And Jun Wu was the protagonist of today's show. He had become the focal point of countless Shen Xian masters. Tian Fa's side has won today's first battle. Bu Guangfeng looked at Venerable Mei and said, "Who will be fighting on Venerable Mei's side in the second battle?" "The Snake King will be fighting on our side in the second battle. You can send anyone to fight one-on-one. After the second battle, regardless of victory or defeat, the third battle will be between me and all the Supreme Being experts here. I want you to lose convincingly." Venerable Mei snorted. His black robe fluttered as he looked at Jun Moxie. His gaze was so intense that Jun Moxie felt as if his face had been pricked by a needle. He felt a stinging pain. "The Venerable is very courageous." Bu Guangfeng smiled and said, "That youngster is also very good. He hasn't taken the medicine to widen his meridians, and hasn't received Shen Xian's blessing. But he's already at the peak of Yu Xian's level. He can be said to be a rare genius even in thousands of years. Could it be that the Venerable intends to accept him as your disciple?" Jun Moxie's body had been transformed by the heaven and earth's aura. His innate aptitude was the best in the continent. And this couldn't be hidden from the great master who had been famous for more than 100 years. In fact, even the great master himself wanted to take him in as a disciple. So, Venerable Mei's eagerness to hunt him down was understandable. But who could have known that those punches and kicks weren't fatal? In fact, they weren't even capable of causing internal injuries. Accept him as my disciple? Venerable Mei's eyes flashed. He suddenly smiled and said, "You've seen through me. Not bad. I do have this intention. Accept him as my disciple. Doesn't that mean that I can torture this hateful guy justifiably? Torture every day and night, anytime and anywhere." This was the first time that Venerable Mei felt at ease after seeing Jun Moxie. Congratulations to Venerable Mei for getting such a good disciple. I believe that another Supreme Master will appear in Jianghu in the future. Bu Guangfeng's tone was full of regret and envy. He believed that if a peak expert like Venerable Mei wanted to accept him as his disciple, wouldn't that Jun Moxie be crying and begging to accept him? There was no need to consider this matter. Well, it is indeed worth congratulating. Venerable Mei's words had a double meaning as he said in a heavy tone. "I don't need to deal with him now, humph humph humph." Venerable Mei let out a long whistle after he finished speaking. Both sides withdrew their troops. What made people speechless was that both sides seemed reluctant to part. Duanmu Chaofan, Xikong Inyi, and Dongfang Wenqing waved their hands. The Xian beasts in front of them also politely waved their front paws. Then, they wagged their tails and retreated. This extremely harmonious scene between man and beast left most of the people on the hillside dumbfounded. Those who had escaped with great difficulty had tears streaming down their cheeks. That brat June Mosia had been shouting about being wronged a moment ago, and he had been scolding people to gain sympathy. But you guys had only been putting on a show for half a day. In fact, not even a single strand of hair had been messed up. But we had been fighting with our heads in our hands. Xiao Han almost vomited blood. He pointed his trembling finger at June Moxie. He said in grief and indignation, So you were colluding. Despicable. Your mother's fart. Who can be more despicable than you when it comes to being despicable? June Moxie rebuked mercilessly. Which eye of yours saw us colluding? That's called etiquette. Do you understand? We had fought for such a long time. How could we not have any feelings? What's wrong with waving at each other? What's wrong? You still have the face to say that? Xiao Han was indignant. You actually, only a few people died, and you actually have feelings for each other. How can you be so shameless? Bullsh *T. Only a few of our people died? Bah, at least half of our people died. But what about you? Not a single one of you died. You still have the face to say the word shameless in front of me? June Moxie glared at him. He was equally indignant. Those are human lives. Don't you know that human lives are precious? Do you know how much I have to pay for the funeral expenses? It's an astronomical figure. Astronomical figure? Funeral expenses? At this time, this fellow was still thinking about this? You. Xiao Han couldn't catch his breath. He stammered for a long time and almost fainted from anger. You're making slanderous accusations. You're the one who was afraid of death. You actually want to frame us for colluding. Have you ever seen a man colluding with a tiger? Why don't you go and collude with one of us? June Moxie was not going to let it go. He stomped his feet and cursed. I look down on people like you the most. You don't have any achievements, and yet you're jealous of others' achievements. You. How can you say that? How can you be so shameless? Xiao Han roared and suddenly fell to the ground. This time, he really fainted from anger. Everyone looked at each other. We don't know how you guys colluded with each other. However, everyone knew that there was definitely something fishy going on. We didn't see how you guys colluded with the mystical beasts, but we also didn't see humans and mystical beasts fighting for half a day to become friends, especially when the mystical beasts raised their front paws and waved goodbye. It was a spectacle that had never been seen in thousands of years. If you guys didn't collude with each other, I wouldn't believe it even if I killed my head. Didn't you hear what this fellow said? If anyone suspected, they could go and collude with one of them to see. Was this something that could be easily colluded with? If it could be easily colluded, everyone here would have been treated the same way as Yun Bi Chen, colluding with a large group of level 9 mystical beasts? How was this colluding? They were clearly going to deliver food. The mystical beasts had just fought and were exhausted. Their bellies were deflated. I haven't lived enough yet. I just escaped from the encirclement and was almost torn to shreds. Do you still want to go? I'm currently in Jian. My flight is tomorrow morning. I've been working overtime for the past few days. I've finally finished writing the 20,000 words for the past 3 days. I'll set the time to upload them later. The time will be 18 and 20 o'clock at night. This was the first time I was participating in Qidian's activities. I had no experience. Although I brought a notebook with me, I didn't know if I had time to write in the past few days. I wasn't sure if I could calm down. However, as long as I could write, no matter how much I wrote in the past few days, it would all explode on the 31st. Chapter 361. Sikong and Yi and the others had already arrived at this time. They heard June Moxie's words from afar. Sikong and Yi turned around and smiled at Duanmu Chaofan. He then exclaimed in admiration, "This boy's shamelessness reminds me of you in the past." Duanmu Chaofan was furious. He grabbed him and said, I. Sikong and Yi hastily raised his hands in surrender. He laughed as if he was crying. He then said in a pained voice, "I was wrong, big brother. I shouldn't have provoked you. Listening to you is too painful. I will change. Is it not enough? Motherf asterisk cur, why haven't you changed your bad habit of having a cheap mouth when I'm with you for dozens of years?" Dongfang Wenqing pushed Jun Wui's wheelchair in the midst of the chaos. She stopped in front of Jun Moxie. Jun Wu-yi smiled helplessly as he looked at his nephew. He then asked in a soft voice, "You?" Jun Moxie chuckled and said, "Third uncle, you're really too brave. You single-handedly fought against several 9th-level Xian beasts, and you did it with ease. Not only did you manage to escape unscathed, but you didn't even gasp for breath. The most amazing thing is that you didn't even move from your wheelchair from beginning to end. This nephew admires you wholeheartedly." "You little rascal!" Jun Wui glared at him and snorted. But he didn't ask any more questions. He knew that this matter had something to do with Jun Moxie. But he didn't want to ask again. After all, this wasn't something he could ask in person. First, there were too many people here. Second, Jun Wui was sure that Jun Moxie had done it. But how he did it was Jun Moxie's secret. Since it was a secret, the fewer people who knew about it, the better. Some things it was better to let others know than to let others see. This was the principle. Therefore, Jun Wui chose not to ask. However, Jun Wui was even more proud. That was because the person who had created this miracle was his nephew. Other than his own nephew, Jun Wui didn't believe that there was anyone else in this world who could do such a thing. But from this point alone, it could be said to be the best in the world. At this moment, there was an empty space in the field. In the middle of the open space, there was an enchanting green-clothed girl. She was like a magnolia in a secluded valley, standing there quietly. Not only was this young lady an outstanding beauty, but she also naturally had a gentle temperament about her. She had a voluptuous figure with a curvy front and a slender waist that seemed like it would snap if the wind blew a little harder. If this figure was on an ordinary woman, the first impression that people would have of her would be a stunner. But this young girl didn't have any of that feeling. Instead, he felt that it was very cute, very warm, and very playful. Her eyes were as clear as water, and her facial features were exquisite. A gentle breeze caressed her soft long hair, making people feel as if they were floating in the air. But the most endearing thing about her was the pure face of this green-clothed girl. It was as if she didn't know the ways of the world, making people feel a strong desire to protect her. Snake King. How could such a peerless beauty be connected to the legendary Snake King of Tian Fa Xian Beast? She was in charge of 10,000 poisons. Her methods were cruel and ruthless. She was one of the Xian Beast Kings of Tian Fa. This was the difference between heaven and earth. But she was. This green-clothed girl was one of the 12 Xian Beast Kings of the Tian Fa forest, the Snake King. He was also the king of 10,000 poisons, one of the most terrifying kings of the Tian Fa forest, the Snake King. Qian Sun. Jun Moxie was surprised because the Venerable Mei didn't send the strongest Xian Beast King besides himself, the Crane King, Long Crane. Instead, he sent the Snake King. Could it be that the Qian Sun Serpent Queen has the ability to defeat the Crane King? Or is she going to use poison to win? Jun Moxie thought about it, but felt that it wasn't very possible. One must know that the Snake King was the king of 10,000 poisons, but her opponent was one of the 8 great masters of the continent. Once one's Xian cultivation reached the level of a great master, even though it couldn't be said to be invulnerable to all kinds of poisons, but ordinary poisons wouldn't have any effect on him. Furthermore, any sovereign realm expert was an astute person with extremely rich combat experience. They were well aware of the poisons that could threaten them, and they would probably have already thought of a countermeasure before their enemies could use them. So, what would be the use of a deadly poison? Even those legendary peerless poisons, which were said to kill upon contact and kill upon contact, were much less effective against a great master-level powerhouse. The people of the continent discussed nervously. Then, a black silhouette came out of the crowd and stood opposite to the Snake King. Jun Moxie hadn't expected that the continent would send the cold-blooded Great Master Lei Wu Bei. Jun Dashao had expected this choice. But Lei Wu Bei wasn't the best choice in Jun Moxie's mind. The solitary eagle was the best choice. The most advantageous thing in a decisive battle against an opponent who was poisoned was to end the battle as quickly as possible. Moreover, the more agile the opponent was, the better. Therefore, the solitary falcon's comprehensive advantage naturally belonged to the solitary falcon. Moreover, the solitary falcon's flying eagle agility was the Snake King's natural enemy. The eagle eats the snake. But how could the continent's allied forces not think of this if Jun Moxie could think of it? Shi Changshao and the others also wanted to send Solitary Eagle to fight. But they didn't dare to take the risk. The situation was very clear. The continent had already lost one round. So, they wouldn't even need to fight the third round if they were to lose again. The solitary falcon didn't like Li Ju Tian and his son. But it was obvious that he had a close relationship with the young Master Jun. Moreover, the Jun family had been able to retreat unscathed in the face of such a great disparity in strength. So, no one would believe that the Jun family didn't have any dirty dealings with Tian Fa. A luck? 300 people's luck is that good? They've all been blessed by heaven on this day? Only an idiot would believe that. Everyone believed that the Jun family and Solitary Eagle wouldn't betray the continent for personal gain. But what if there was a mishap? Who can afford such a responsibility? Therefore, the continent's allied forces had chosen Lei Wu Bei to fight. Moreover, Lei Wu Bei's Xian cultivation was much more vigorous than that of Solitary Eagle's. Both sides had already decided on the candidates for the battle. The fifth great master of the continent's allied forces would fight against the Tian Fa's Beast King, Myriad Poison's Snake King, Qian Sun. Suddenly, a vigorous silhouette flashed from the opposite side of the Tian Fa forest. It left behind a series of afterimages, and arrived in front of Jun Wui and Dongfang wenching like lightning. Then, it grabbed Jun Moxie, who was standing between the two of them. Then, it quickly retreated, and left behind only a series of afterimages. Two long afterimages appeared on the left and right side of the field. They were so densely packed that they formed two parallel straight lines. It seemed as if two neat rows of soldiers were standing opposite each other. Then, they disappeared at the same time. Celestial Immortal Incarnation, Thousand Phantoms. The World Cage. Lei Bao Yu and Bu Kuang Feng cried out in alarm. The two of them were genuinely shocked by the Lord of Tian Fa's endless and profound methods. This venerable Mei hasn't used many of his trump cards. Could it be that his strength had truly reached the level of being on par with the master of the elusive world of immortals? But Tian Fa still has. The two of them swallowed their saliva with difficulty. Venerable Mei had grabbed Jun Moxie's hand. It was the world cage that he had used to deal with Li Ju Tian. Venerable Mei hadn't been able to make Jun Moxie disappear from his hands. But he had guessed that it was an unfathomable secret technique. Then, he thought that Jun Dashao was that mysterious expert's disciple. So, he understood that he had such a method. He couldn't understand such a secret technique. In fact, he might not even be able to restrain it. But it was another matter to guard against and subdue Jun Dashao. Therefore, Venerable Mei had used the world cage in order to capture Jun Moxie. He hadn't used it on Dashao earlier because that kid's strength was too trashy. So, using such a divine technique would have been like using a butcher's knife to kill a chicken. But he had confirmed that this kid's escaping skills were unparalleled in the world even though he was a trash. So, he had used his full strength to capture him. Then, he had brought him back to the group of beasts, and had thrown him to the ground. Jun Moxie's buttocks ached with a puff sound. Fortunately, there were no stones on the ground. Otherwise, he would have exploded. Junwei raised his eyebrows. Dongfang Wenqing hurriedly whispered in his ear. The one who attacked just now was the Lord of Tianfa. He must have taken a fancy to Mo Xie's extraordinary aptitude. I also heard that he intends to take Mo Xie as his disciple. This is a blessing for Mo Xie. So, don't be impatient. Junwei nodded. But his eyes were filled with worry. But he was also clear that he was completely powerless against the Lord of Tianfa. He could only pray for his nephew's good fortune. No one would have thought that Venerable Mei would suddenly make such a move. Even Jun Moxie hadn't expected it. By the time he reacted, he had already discovered that he couldn't move his entire body. So, he decided to use his mind to escape into the Hongjun Pagoda to escape from the enemy's grasp. But he was surprised to discover that his body couldn't move even a single inch, even though his spirit sense was still connected to the Hongjun Pagoda. What a tragedy! In Venerable Mei's heaven and earth cage that could seal the heaven and earth spiritual chi, Jun Moxie had returned to the original state of the first level. Only his consciousness could enter, but his body couldn't. Jun Moxie's heart was filled with hatred. This damned old bastard keeps messing with me. What is his intention? How did I offend him? Is there a need to be so unforgiving? Is he addicted to torturing me? Is he really a sadist? But who do I think I am? There are so many Supreme Shenxian here. Which one of them wouldn't have a greater sense of accomplishment than me? Why did he pick me? Jun Moxie couldn't figure it out. Be obedient. Sit still and don't move. Otherwise, you will suffer. Venerable Mei kicked his butt from behind. His position was right behind Jun Mo Xie's back. So, no one would be able to see him move his leg. Jun Mo Xie took a vicious kick, and the pain pierced through his heart. But he didn't move, and the expression on his face was still a smile. Chapter 362. Venerable Mei's heaven and earth cage was truly an unfathomable technique. I want to move, but I can't. Jun Moxie cursed in his heart, smiling as he sat in front of Venerable Mei. In the heaven and earth cage, even the muscles on his face couldn't be moved. Bang bang bang. 3 consecutive kicks landed on his buttock. Jun Moxie cursed in his heart, almost exploding with anger. Are you addicted to kicking? You old pervert! What he didn't know was that Venerable Mei was pouting under her veil, muttering to herself, I'll let you twist my buttocks every day. Rub again. Rub again. I'll let you rub again. You despicable bastard. Every dog has its day, I'll play you to death. As he muttered to himself, he kept kicking. The more he kicked, the more addicted he became. Every sentence he muttered was followed by a kick. The battle between Snake King and the cold-blooded Venerable had yet to begin, but Jun Moxie's buttocks had already become round and swollen, almost transparent. On the opposite side, Dongfang Wenqing looked carefully and smiled. Look, Mo Xie has a smile on his face. Looks like it's a good thing. Jun Wei looked at Jun Mo Xie and finally felt relieved. Then, he smiled in a gratified manner and said, This brat is really lucky to have such a senior expert like him. This is Mo Xie's fortune, and the Jun family's fortune. Yeah, look at his smile. It looks like he's having a good time. I guess Venerable Mei must have given him a lot of benefit. Dongfang Wendao rubbed his chin and laughed. Nonsense, if it were me, I would also be having a good time. That's a master who's even more powerful than a great master. Dongfang Wenjian rolled his eyes at his third brother. Was there a need to say it? How could a young boy not be happy when he was treated so well by a peerless master? Why didn't I have such good luck when I was young? The 3 brothers were a little jealous. The 3 of us are very close to this kid's bloodline. What they didn't know was that Jun Moxie was feeling good right now. He was about to die from pleasure. He was truly in so much pain that he wished he was dead. His butt kept getting kicked, and his body kept getting twisted. His entire body was already covered in bruises, but even though he was in so much pain, he couldn't even put on a crying expression. If his uncles knew that June Moxie was having such a good time, right now, they would not be jealous anymore. June Moxie clearly felt that his buttocks had swelled up like a balloon in a short period of time, doubling in size. Moreover, this trend was still developing. Is this still AF * king ass? It was like a hot air balloon. Brother just sat on the ground, and slowly I actually felt like I was sitting on a bench. I'm getting taller. Right at this moment there was movement in the surroundings. The cold-blooded Great Master, Lei Wu Bei? Qian Sun Serpent Queen's voice was exceptionally clear and melodious. It even had a trace of gentleness to it. She innocently blinked her big eyes as she asked in a very curious and naive manner. Her demeanor and her movements were clearly that of a young girl who didn't know much about worldly affairs. She was shy and afraid to greet a stranger. The onlookers had an impulse to go up and pat her head. They would praise her. Good little girl, don't be afraid. Brother will buy you some candy. However, Lei Wu Bei didn't dare to think like that. The Xian cultivation of the other beast kings couldn't be compared to the 8 great masters, except for the venerable Mei of Tian Fa. But, the reason why they were able to share the same fame as the 8 great masters of the continent was that each of them possessed an extremely powerful body. An ordinary blow was like an itch to them. His incomparably tyrannical body was enough to keep pace with the 8 great masters even if his Xian Qi was slightly inferior. In addition, he could use his sneaky and insidious method. So, it was very likely that he would fail miserably today. The little girl in front of him looked delicate. She seemed so fragile that she couldn't even withstand a single blow. She looked like a bag of water. However, Lei Wu Bei knew very well that this little girl was actually a snake king. Moreover, she was the most insidious one in the Tian Fa forest. His fist wouldn't even redden if he were to hit her body. But, would he dare to take a direct hit from her? Is this the Snake King? I've heard a lot about you. Lei Wu Bei acted as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He turned his hand and a cold light flashed in his hand. It was a strangely shaped serrated blade. One side of the blade was as clear as the autumn waters. It flickered with a cold light. It was obviously a sharp weapon that could cut through iron like mud. The other side was crisscrossed with dense serrated teeth. This was a sharp weapon, but it was also a lethal weapon. June Moxie finally understood as soon as he saw this weapon. The reason why Lei Wu Bei had been allowed to step onto the stage wasn't just because he had no other choice. It was because of his treasured blade. Lei Wu Bei's treasured blade could deal with the Xian beast's impenetrable thick skin. So, it was obvious that Lei Wu Bei's treasured blade had a very strong destructive power. Especially that serrated blade. It was an excellent way to deal with the Snake King. The Qian Sun Serpent Queen stood there in a delicate and timid manner. She looked delicate and pitiful. She seemed surprised as she called out, "Great Master Lei, how can you be so heartless when faced with such a terrible weapon?" She raised her hand to cover her mouth as she spoke. It seemed as if she was about to turn around and run away. June Moxie could only move his eyes. So, he naturally wanted to make good use of them. He could see at a glance that the Qian Sun Serpent Queen's clothes fit her slim shoulders. However, her sleeves were too wide in comparison. In fact, they almost touched the ground. Strange. Something is definitely strange. Lei Wu Bei snorted heavily as he heard the Snake King's words. Then, he quickly moved sideways, and brandished the long blade in his hand in a cross-shaped pattern. It seemed as if 2 bolts of lightning had intersected in the air. 2 qi sounds were heard as the multicolored snakes were chopped into 4 pieces. They then fell to the ground and twisted in pain. It's indeed the Snake King. He's worthy of his sinister reputation. Lei Wu Bei snorted angrily. His black face had turned somewhat pale. Those 2 poisonous snakes were the incomparably poisonous 7-colored ladies. Even a great master-level expert would be paralyzed for a while if they were bitten by one of them, even if it wouldn't be fatal. The paralysis would only last for 1 or 2 breaths. But it was enough for a great master-level expert like the Snake King to put himself in 100 different positions. And he could do whatever he wanted to do. You're being wrongly accused. I didn't do anything. The Qian Sun Serpent Queen smiled tenderly. What's that? It's so scary. She looked at the poisonous snakes on the ground. Her eyes were wide open, and she seemed to be very frightened and surprised. Lei Wu Bei raised his blade once again. Bang! Another snake bumped into the blade's surface. This one was more urgent and faster. It was aimed at Lei Wu Bei's throat. The most frightening thing was that it didn't make a single sound. In fact, it didn't even have the slightest reflection in the sunlight. The Snake King's attack was very difficult to guard against. She smiled sweetly as she spoke. She had already silently launched her deadly attack. Jun Moxie felt a chill run down his spine as he looked at her. You can't judge a book by its cover. You can't measure the sea with a pail. The little girl looked pure and lovely. She looked innocent and pure. She looked harmless. Who would have thought that she would kill Lei Wu Bei 3 times in the blink of an eye? It was a typical case of brother sweetly called out to him from the opposite side. His conscience was very, very bad. The situation in the field changed once again. The Snake King twisted her slender waist, and her graceful body quickly turned around. Then, she suddenly waved her sleeves, and the wind and clouds suddenly changed. It seemed as if 2 green dragons had rushed out of her sleeves, and had grown to 7 feet in an instant. In fact, it didn't matter if they were near or far. There was nothing they couldn't reach. The entire field turned into a sea of green amidst the whistling wind. The cold-blooded master Lei Wu Bei was submerged in it. This was the true display of the Snake King's strength. And this was only the beginning. Lei Wu Bei's black figure was like a reef in the boundless sea. No matter how turbulent the waves were, he would remain motionless. He was a true pillar of support. The Snake King's offensive didn't stop there. Instead, it became even more ferocious. Suddenly, her slender body soared high into the sky. She danced gracefully in the midst of the sea of green. She looked like a fairy who had stepped on the boundless waves of the Milky Way as she soared high into the sky. She gently flipped her lily-white hands, and countless cold stars flashed. Then, more cold stars suddenly appeared, and sprinkled towards Lei Wu Bei from all directions. However, the Snake King's face remained pure and flawless as she sprinkled the cold stars with her lily-white hands. In fact, she seemed to be overflowing with interest. It seemed as if she was playing a game that she would never get tired of. It seemed as if she hadn't realized that the cold stars she had sprinkled were enough to poison the ground beneath her feet. Lei Wu Bei was no longer stubbornly defending himself. The cold-blooded master Lei Wu Bei finally brought out his trump card in the face of the Snake King's torrential offensive. A muffled whistling sound was heard as the long blade crisscrossed in a crisscrossing manner. The blade's aura was awe-inspiring. It carried an extremely vast and majestic force. A silver-white wave slowly rolled out from the center of the sea of green. It rolled and surged endlessly. The great masters who were watching from all sides started to use their Xian Qi to defend themselves the moment the blade's aura soared into the sky. They firmly protected their own areas. Otherwise, Lei Wu Bei's blade's aura would have penetrated their defenses, and would have cut a path of blood into the crowd behind them. It would have been like a ferocious dragon crossing the river. Their own people would have lost a lot of their own people before they could even hurt anyone. Lei Wu Bei occupied the geographical advantage and launched a counterattack. However, the Qian Sun Serpent Queen was firmly in control of the air. Her delicate white feet were getting more and more urgent. The expression on her face had gradually changed from a relaxed and playful expression to one of calmness and seriousness. She brandished her jade-like arms, and the cold stars fell down with a rustling sound. In fact, they had joined together to form a single wave of cold light. The scene of the fierce battle was very pleasing to the eye. The silver-white waves continued to appear in the middle of the sea of green. Waves of cold light continued to sprinkle down from the sky. This was a beautiful scene. Anyone who saw this scene would feel relaxed and happy even though they knew that there was a heavy killing intent in it. Chapter 363. The Second Watch. Lei Wu Bei's pitch-black silhouette soared into the sky along with the billowing silver-white saber wave. It seemed as if a fountain had suddenly gushed out of a dark green sea. It seemed as if the sun was shining brightly, and it was radiating thousands of rays of light. It seemed as if it would destroy everything in its path. It seemed as if there was no turning back as it brazenly soared into the sky. The real decisive battle has officially begun, someone said in a low voice. Everyone present focused their attention at the same time and looked over without blinking. Jun Moxie's eyes were solemn as he looked at the battle. He had even forgotten about the pain he was feeling. The Snake King and the cold-blooded Great Master had changed their move. They had advanced and retreated. They had dodged and turned around. They had been slowly replayed in his mind. He had been comparing their moves with his own, and had been learning from their strengths to make up for their weaknesses. Bear Mountain and Long Crane stretched their necks on the Tian Fa's side. Jun Moxie could clearly feel Venerable Mei pinching the soft flesh of his waist from behind. Jun Moxie's soul was trembling in pain. Motherf *Ker. Why is he pinching and twisting people? Why is he using this method like a woman? However, Jun Moxie suddenly realized, could it be that the Snake King is in danger while facing Lei Wu Bei's earth-shattering move? Otherwise, why are the three Beast Kings so nervous? But I can only see that the Snake King is coping with this with ease. He should be able to get through this. Jun Moxie opened his eyes wide as he thought of this. He couldn't care less about the pain. Suddenly, the Qian Sun Serpent Queen shouted. Her slender body rotated, and the green sea on the ground suddenly disappeared. Then, a bright green beam of light soared high into the sky. A round silver-white blade tower wrapped in a vague black silhouette appeared. It whistled sharply, and it seemed as if it would tear the world apart. It seemed as if an angry dragon had broken free from its shackles. It scuttled out of the ground, and chased after the body like a shadow. It was as dazzling as Ho-E shooting the sun. The incomparably strong light shone on the ground, and the faces of the onlookers turned deathly pale. One with the saber. Furthermore, it's not just the ordinary fusion of man and saber. Jun Moxie exclaimed in his heart. This is a powerful saber art that combines the essence, qi, and divine saber into one. I didn't think that the cold-blooded Master Lei Wu Bei would have such a trump card. However, Jun Moxie changed his train of thought. Lei Wu Bei is one of the 8 great masters. So, it's reasonable for him to have such a trump card. But that little girl is really in danger. High up in the sky, the Snake King raised his head and roared angrily for the first time. His voice was sharp and piercing through the clouds. Thousands of mystical beasts in the vicinity lowered their heads in unison. Then, she somersaulted in the air, and suddenly turned into a huge cold star, rushing down. They were like distant meteors that set off from 2 different places, but at this moment, they were about to collide in the sky here. The whistling wind caused the millions of spectators below to hold their breath. A melodious and clear cry was heard, and an oppressive roar was heard at the same time. The 2 balls of light fiercely collided with each other with a loud bang. Then, a continuous sound of collision resounded. It sounded like the unceasing roar of a rocket. The ground trembled unceasingly, and the sky was filled with splendid fireworks. It seemed as if the entire sky had sunk into darkness at this moment. Only the magnificent lights in the sky were emitting 7 colored lights, and were swaying in all directions. Jun Moxie was carefree and happy. It seemed as if he had returned to his previous life on Earth. It was the Lantern Festival, a draw. Lei Baoyu, Bu Kuang Feng, Venerable Mei, and the others on the ground had come to this conclusion at the same time while they were still colliding in the sky. A loud bang was heard as the two crossed each other. The silver-white saber continued to soar into the sky like a comet, and rushed out with a long tail. The cold black light suddenly rushed towards the ground. The sky was filled with a bloody rain at the same time. Countless pieces of the snake's body were as thick as chopsticks, and were falling down with a crackling sound. A thick layer of blood had gathered on the ground. Only God knew how this delicate Snake King had managed to bring these things up into the sky, and then sprinkle them on Lei Wu Bei. Then she staggered back a dozen steps before she finally stabilized herself. A trace of light purple blood slowly flowed out from the corner of her mouth. Her complexion was pale, and her green clothes had become tattered. Moreover, there were cuts all over her body. Her snow-white and proud arms were exposed in front of everyone. However, her wide sleeves had already turned into green butterflies that filled the sky. And they fluttered in the air one after another, and disappeared without a trace. Lei Wu Bei slowly fell with a schwa sound. His feet touched the ground and his legs went soft. He forced himself to stand up. His appearance was even more distressed. His black robe was covered with countless fragments of snake heads. He had long been bitten to pieces, and there were many tears on his robe. It seemed as if he had been cut by a weapon. His hair was disheveled, and he looked like a beggar. A wisp of dark red blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, and couldn't be controlled. His emotionless face was as red as a rock. It seemed as if he was drunk. Then, his face turned snow-white and then red again. His complexion changed back and forth several times. They were evenly matched. The two men stood facing each other for a long time. Lei Wu Bei clenched his teeth and said, "What a good Snake King! He's really amazing! The cold-blooded Great Master deserves his reputation. He's worthy of being called a Great Master." The Qian Sun Serpent Queen smiled tenderly. But blood was still dripping from the corners of her mouth. She was laughing so hard that blood was splattering everywhere. However, this didn't diminish her beauty. In fact, she looked even more pitiful and beautiful than before. "I wonder what Venerable Mei thinks of this battle as a draw?" Lei Baoyu took a step forward and asked with a smile on his face. "A draw." Venerable Mei kicked Jun Moxie's buttocks again. Then, he looked at Lei Baoyu and spoke in a meaningful tone. Suddenly, he smiled and said, "Very well. Let's call it a draw." Lei Baoyu's face couldn't help but turn red. It seemed that they were evenly matched. In fact, Lei Wu Bei even had a slight advantage over the other two. However, Lei Baoyu knew that the Snake King had achieved such a result in his human form. He hadn't revealed his true form yet. It could be said that he hadn't used all his cards yet. Lei Baoyu believed that Lei Wu Bei wouldn't be so relaxed if he were to fight to the death in his human form. However, the Snake King wouldn't have an easy time even if Lei Wu Bei were to die here. She wouldn't have been buried with him. But, her vitality would have been severely damaged. In fact, it was likely that she wouldn't have the ability to transform into a human for the rest of her life. In fact, her strength would have regressed to that of a level 7 or 8 Xian beast. This was tantamount to mutual destruction. Therefore, it wasn't a bad idea to call it a draw. Lei Wu Bei stood upright. His face still had that unchanging expression of a corpse. It was as cold and detached as a block of iron. However, the cheers of the crowd had already started to resound. Their cheers resounded through the sky. Lei Wu Bei hadn't won at this moment. But, he had successfully leveled the score. This was tantamount to a revival for the continent's allied forces. They had just lost the first battle. Lei Wu Bei was a cold-blooded master. Everyone was afraid of him. However, he had become a true hero of the continent at this moment. He was a hero of mankind. They had suffered a crushing defeat in the first battle because of a wrong strategy and a despicable plot. Their defeat had been extremely unsightly, and they had been thoroughly defeated. But, the second battle had been an open battle. It had been a hand-to-hand battle. They hadn't been able to achieve a complete victory. But they had still managed to force the Qian Sun Serpent Queen into a draw. This was tantamount to taking a breather. Many people believed that they wouldn't have lost if the Shui Hun Manor and the Silver Blizzard City hadn't come up with a rotten idea in the first battle. Moreover, they would have been assisted by Jun Wui's outstanding command. The enemy had dispatched the Snake King in this battle. The solitary eagle was the great Master Falcon. The Allied forces hadn't dared to count on him. But they hadn't done much research in the field of poisons. Therefore, they didn't have any confidence in dealing with the King of Poisons, the Snake King. Fortunately, Lei Wu Bei had done a lot of research in the field of poisons. This was the main reason why the people of Jianghu had called him the cold-blooded master. But they hadn't expected that he would achieve such a feat. Therefore, the key point was the third battle. Venerable Mei wanted to use his own strength to fight against all the great masters of the Allied forces. No one believed that Venerable Mei had such formidable strength. After all, they still had 4 great masters on their side. The two people cupped their hands in obeisance. Lei Wu Bei said, "I was lucky." Qian Sun Serpent Queen snorted. Then, she turned around and walked away. It seemed that she was brooding over the fact that she hadn't achieved the victory she had expected. Lei Wu Bei smiled faintly as he slowly walked back. His arm trembled slightly. He was well aware that his treasured blade had been bent. In fact, there were many fine cracks on the blade's body. It could still be used, but it wouldn't be able to deal with a great master-level battle. Qian Sun Serpent Queen was extraordinary. She had used her strange hidden weapons, and they were either dead or alive. Moreover, they were filled with deadly poisons. It was a headache-splitting headache. These two people seemed to have sustained serious injuries on the surface. But their injuries weren't serious. In fact, they didn't even affect their ability to fight. In fact, the two of them were well aware of what was going on. In the last move, the two of them had chosen to move away from each other to maintain such a situation. However, if they were to continue, it would only result in mutual destruction. Therefore, although the two of them were somewhat unconvinced, they both heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. The ground, which was originally green and gritty, had already turned black, and there were small potholes all over the place. Moreover, some places were still emitting white smoke as they slowly continued to sink. Nothing would be able to grow in this area for at least 100 years. The Snake King's poison was indeed the best in the world. A silhouette flashed, and Venerable Mei appeared in the middle of the field. She then spoke in a loud voice, "This is the final battle to decide the winner. All the great masters on the other side can come out now." Lei Baoyu was about to speak. But he swallowed his words and smiled bitterly. However, everyone had a feeling that Venerable Mei's spirit was different this time. He had been somewhat manic and unstable a moment ago. But now, he was calm and composed. It was as if he had become a Buddha. His face couldn't be seen, but the aura around his body had calmed down a lot. Jun Moxie touched his buttocks on the sidelines and cursed. This big brother's buttocks became 4 times bigger in exchange for this achievement. Chapter 364. A great battle is imminent. Solitary Eagle snorted, and took the lead to step forward. He then cupped his fists and said, "Venerable Mei, I, Solitary Eagle, have come to ask for advice." His voice was as sonorous as metal. Solitary Eagle was ranked last amongst the great masters. However, he was the most combative person in his life. Moreover, he had experienced an even more frightening aura from a mysterious expert. Venerable Mei's strength was equally astonishing. Solitary Eagle was amazed, but he didn't feel much fear. In fact, his state of mind was above Yuren's. The great master of life and death, Shi Changshao, followed closely behind. He smiled warmly, "Venerable Mei, I am Shi Changshao." Lei Wu Bei had just retreated. He stood there for a moment with a calm face. Then, he slowly walked forward and spoke with a cold face. Venerable May, I don't think I need to introduce myself, right? Very well. Are there only 3 of you? Venerable May snorted. He couldn't help but feel disappointed. These 3 men's combined strength was equivalent to that of the Crane King, the Bear King, and the Snake King's combined strength. In fact, they were even weaker. So, they weren't a match for Venerable May. In fact, they could barely contend with him. Wait. This old man will also participate in this battle. A sorrowful and indignant roar resounded. Li Ju Tian trembled as he stood up. Li Ju Tian had sustained serious injuries, but he was still one of the 8 great masters. He had endured the humiliation and had endured the pain. He hadn't left just for this moment. Li Ju Tian only had this one opportunity to regain his reputation against Venerable May. In fact, it might even be his last opportunity to redeem his reputation. He could only rely on the strength of the other 3 great masters to defeat Venerable May in one fell swoop. Only then could he wash away his shame. In fact, he could even go one step further. Li Ju Tian knew that it would be impossible for him to fight alone if he missed this opportunity. Therefore, he had received serious injuries. Many of his bones had been fractured, and his internal injuries weren't light either. However, he had managed to restore his broken bones to their original positions during the fight between the Snake King and Lei Wu Bei. Then, he had forcibly activated his self-mutilating secret technique, the art of defying the heavens. He had sacrificed his life to restore his body to its optimal state. Moreover, he had used his exquisite Xian Qi to firmly control his broken bones. This battle was Li Ju Tian's last. He would have to cut off all means of retreat. No matter what, they had to achieve the most brilliant results in this battle and display the most awe-inspiring might. Venerable May, as the saying goes, every dog has its day. Let me return the favor you gave me a few days ago. Li Ju Tian gasped for breath as he fiercely glared at Venerable May. It seemed as if he was looking at his mortal enemy. In fact, the enmity between the 2 of them was so great that they couldn't live under the same sky. In fact, there was no room for reconciliation. Venerable May hadn't reached this point since he was the victor. But Li Ju Tian would never be able to get rid of this shame and humiliation in this life unless he could defeat Venerable May. Li Ju Tian, are you planning to fight me? Venerable May was able to see how Li Ju Tian had managed to stand up from his serious injuries. So, she couldn't help but feel pity for him. She knew that Li Ju Tian was completely innocent. However, he had been caught in the crossfire twice when her temper had been at its worst. In fact, he had been caught in the crossfire like an innocent bystander. And these 2 times had been the most depressing, painful, and indignant moments of her life. So, she had urgently needed someone to vent her anger on. And Li Ju Tian was the 2nd great master. So, he had taken up the responsibility. Li Ju Tian was the most suitable candidate at that time, whether it was his status or his Xian cultivation. Therefore, Li Ju Tian's tragedy had befallen him. And he had unwittingly brought this tragedy upon himself. That's because a scholar can be killed, but not humiliated. Venerable May naturally understood this truth. But, he had grabbed Li Ju Tian's neck and slapped him in front of the eyes of tens of thousands of people. And he had thoroughly destroyed Li Ju Tian's reputation as the 2nd great master. It would be the strangest thing if he didn't fight him to the death. Based on his actual strength, it was originally hopeless for him in this lifetime. Yet, there was such an excellent opportunity to join hands with a supreme martial artist. How could he let go of this last chance? Is it worth it? Venerable May looked apologetic as he reminded Li Ju Tian, Li Ju Tian, you should be very clear about the price you have to pay to use the art of defying the heavens. You've sacrificed so much in one go. So, do you really not want to reconsider? You only need to disperse your strength if you regret it now. Then you can recover in 3 to 5 months. There's still time. No. It's too late. It's too late. Li Ju Tian's eyes blazed as he spoke in a mournful tone. Venerable Mei, are you afraid? You should know that it's already too late the moment your slap fell on my face. I, Li Ju Tian, am a man of prestige. There's only one way to wash away this humiliation. There's no other way. Oh? Afraid? I'm afraid of you? You want to wash away this humiliation? Are you planning to take my life? Venerable Mei smiled in a relaxed manner. His black robe gently swayed in the wind. That's right. Li Ju Tian spoke up in a serious manner. Venerable Mei, please don't be stingy with your head for the sake of this Li's reputation. Don't be stingy with your head? Hee hee. Li Ju Tian, you're advising me not to be stingy with my head. But you're stingy with your insignificant reputation? Do you know that your reputation isn't worth mentioning in my eyes? My advice to you was a pity and charity for a weakling. It's rare that I'm in a good mood. But you've misunderstood it as fear. I shouldn't have called you a frog in a well, or a naive one. Venerable Mei couldn't help but laugh mockingly. He then shook his head and said, Li Ju Tian, I'll give you my head if you have the ability to do so. I'm afraid that you'll be the one to lose your head. Venerable Mei, it's still too early to make a conclusion about who'll be the one to lose his head. Li Ju Tian snorted. Venerable Mei is right. My reputation may not be worth much in Venerable Mei's eyes. But it's more important than my head. I'm afraid that the rankings of the 8 great masters will change after today's battle. Venerable Mei's entire body was shrouded in a black robe as he spoke up in an indifferent manner. He seemed disappointed and frustrated. I've been apprehensive about the great master Bu Quangfeng's reputation for so many years. The divine swordsman of the fierce Gale Feng Wanyun's cultivation has been sufficient for a long time. But he hasn't been able to become a great master. The 8 great masters will be vacant after today. So, Feng Wanyun won't be able to retreat even if he wants to. Bu Quangfeng smiled from afar. The title of Great Master Fierce Gale no longer belongs to me. Venerable Mei, you're looking down on me with your word. Venerable Mei snorted and smiled. But this cold-blooded great master still has the guts to besiege me after the battle. So, he's probably here to die as a scapegoat, right? I really don't know what position he's coming from. Do you really think that I won't kill? Venerable Mei's psychological attack could be said to be very powerful. He had attacked Li Ju Tian, and had hit the nail on the head by pointing out the real reason why the divine swordsman of the fierce Gale Feng Wanyun couldn't become a great master. His purpose was to attack Solitary Eagle's fighting spirit. He's willing to be on the same level as you. In fact, he's even willing to take a step back. It's not that he's inferior to you. He could have become a great master a long time ago. But you've taken advantage of him because he's a great master. It had to be said that Solitary Eagle's heart was shaken as he heard these words. Then, Venerable Mei turned his attention to Lei Wu Bei. He pointed out that Lei Wu Bei was injured. Lei Wu Bei wouldn't be able to make up the numbers even if he were to come forward. Moreover, he would be sacrificed as a shield by the other great masters. These words might not have had such an obvious effect on other people. But Lei Wu Bei had always been a very suspicious person. Lei Wu Bei thought that everyone in the world was his enemy. So, these words had touched the bottom of his heart. In fact, they had gone straight to his heart. This was the reason why he had hesitated earlier. The competition between the great masters was also very fierce. He could have sacrificed Lei Wu Bei to save himself in a time of crisis. He could have eliminated his competitors. Moreover, he could have taken advantage of the situation to create an opportunity for himself. And he could have become famous in one fell swoop. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? However, Lei Wu Bei had obtained the halo of the continent's hero. So, he had no choice but to come forward even if he knew that it would be risky. However, Lei Wu Bei's complexion changed as soon as Venerable Mei's words left Solitary Eagle's mouth. The halo of the continent's hero was certainly glorious, but it was only an inconspicuous decoration for a dead man. Venerable Mei's psychological attack is very incisive. I admire it, but I'm afraid that Venerable Mei has chosen the wrong target. Shi Changshao chuckled and said, "The four of us are veterans of hundreds of battles, and any one of us can be said to be the originator of psychological attack. But isn't Venerable Mei underestimating us by using this trick in front of us? Moreover, the four of us are of one mind, and we're shouldering the responsibility of millions upon millions of people of the continent. So, how can we fall for Venerable Mei's provocation? Let me ask you, if Venerable Mei really had such great confidence in herself, would she have wasted her breath like this?" The other two men came to their senses as soon as he said this. Li Ju Tian ferociously shouted and said, "Words are useless. Let's see who's the real deal. Today, let the four of us experience the power of the so-called Lord of Tian Fa, the 10,000 Beasts Venerable One." He laughed loudly, and took the lead to rush out despite his serious injuries. Someone had to make the first move in a battle between 5 people. And the first person to make the first move would often be at a disadvantage. So, he would be met with a head-on attack. But it would create an opportunity for the others. Shi Changxiao's words had dispelled Venerable Mei's psychological attack. But the four great masters weren't afraid of Venerable Mei's tyrannical methods. So, they had no choice but to fight at the moment. Moreover, the other 3 great masters wouldn't feel bad even if they were to lose this battle. But Li Ju Tian couldn't. Half of his Shui Hun Manor's strength had been destroyed in the war between the humans and the beast. Moreover, he had been humiliated by Venerable Mei. Moreover, he had disregarded the safety of the continent's people, and had schemed against Junwui. His reputation had been swept to the ground, and he had been deserted. So, everything would vanish if he couldn't defeat Venerable Mei. Chapter 365. Second Watch of the 30th. Shi Changshao, Solitary Eagle, and Lei Wu Bei didn't dare to neglect Li Ju Tian's charge. They quickly shifted their positions, and took up their positions in a split second. Then, they attacked in sequence. They hadn't discussed any strategy beforehand, but which one of them wasn't a veteran of 100 battles? Everyone's position was the best for coordinating with the other two. Moreover, it was the best position for Li Ju Tian. Li Ju Tian's figure gradually faded as he rushed forward. He had attacked at the fastest speed possible. Venerable Mei snorted and punched out. Li Ju Tian's body shrank, and arrived in front of Venerable Mei. But he slid to the side like a loach and retreated diagonally. Then 2 fists suddenly shot out from his original position, and collided with Venerable Mei's fist. Solitary Eagle soared into the sky at the same time. He unleashed his eagle agility technique at full speed, and swooped down from the sky. 9 claws of the ghostly eagle. First move. Lei Wu Bei's black blade shone once again. It drilled out from under Shi Changxiao's ribs, and pierced towards Venerable Mei's chest. It enveloped a radius of 5 feet around his upper body. This was a battle of honor and life. So, he had to fight even if he was stingy with his treasured blade. Meanwhile, Li Ju Tian's retreating figure turned around at a high speed like a spinning top. He changed the momentum of his retreat, and returned to launch another fierce attack from Li Ju Tian's side. The 4 men attacked first and then followed. But their coordination could be said to be seamless. Their attacks were aimed at Venerable Mei's vital point. Moreover, each of their attacks was strange and unpredictable. On the surface, it seemed as if the 4 of them were using simple punches and kicks. But Venerable Mei was well aware that no matter which one of them she faced, it would turn into a torrential torrent of complicated attacks. And she would be entangled by the other party in a very short time. As for the other 3's true trump cards, They would be unleashed the instant he was entangled in the battle. Venerable Mei didn't dare to be careless in the face of the four great masters. He let out a long roar and spun his body to avoid Shi Changxiao's fists. His black robe whirled and deflected Lei Wu Bei's blade. Then, he turned around and moved his body sideways. He hadn't retracted his fist, but it was still aimed at Li Ju Tian. Then, he raised his left hand and threw out a powerful cannonball to meet Solitary Eagle. Venerable Mei didn't panic even though she was being besieged by four great masters at the same time. In fact, she had calmly neutralized their attacks in an instant. Moreover, she hadn't shown any weakness in her counterattack. Li Ju Tian clenched his teeth and increased his speed. He knew that one of the four men would have to sacrifice his strength to fight against Venerable Mei. Then, the other three would be able to take advantage of this opportunity to surround him. The other three didn't have the courage to do so, and they wouldn't do so. Moreover, Li Ju Tian's injuries wouldn't last long. So, he had no choice but to do it himself. Li Ju Tian's hatred for Venerable Mei had pushed him to make this crazy decision. His knuckles crackled, and a faint layer of green energy shrouded his fist. It was evident that he had put all of his strength into this punch. He wanted to fight against Venerable Mei without any trick. He had calculated that Venerable Mei would have been like an arrow at the end of its flight after he had forced the other three men to retreat. So, he would have had no choice but to fight against him. Li Ju Tian would have had only one choice if he had been in Venerable Mei's position. Venerable Mei's complexion turned cold. She withdrew her fist in the time it takes for a spark to fly off of a flint. Then, she punched again, and met Li Ju Tian's attack with the void-splitting fist. Then, she roared and kicked her legs 49 times in a row. Her entire body rose into the air, and soared into the sky like a cannonball. The three people below were still distracted by this attack. But, the sound of firecrackers had already been heard in the sky. Venerable Mei and the Solitary Falcon had exchanged 7 or 8 moves at lightning speed. 2 shadows flashed at the same time. Solitary Eagle somersaulted in the sky. Venerable Mei descended in a beautiful trajectory. However, he suddenly turned upside down as he fell. Then, he extended his wide sleeves, and abandoned Shi Changxiao and Lei Wu Bei. Then, he ferociously pounced towards Li Ju Tian. Anyone could see that Venerable Mei was advancing with an indomitable momentum. It was clear that he wanted to take advantage of Li Ju Tian's serious injuries to get rid of this abominable and troublesome guy. Li Ju Tian shouted, and retreated at lightning speed. He had hoped to fight against Venerable Mei, but it was extremely irrational to do so at this time. Venerable Mei had shaken off the others. So, it was tantamount to a one-on-one fight. Li Ju Tian had also lost his balance. His strength had been exhausted, and he hadn't recovered yet. So, Venerable Mei could easily dodge his attack even if he were to risk his life. Moreover, the Solitary Eagle had been struck in the sky. So, the threat in the sky had been temporarily eliminated. Therefore, Li Ju Tian could only retreat. Oh no! Lei Bao Yu and Bu Kuang Feng slapped their thighs as they watched the fight from afar. Li Ju Tian retreated. But, he was surprised to find that Venerable Mei hadn't chased after him. In fact, he hadn't even moved out of inertia. It seemed as if his body was being pulled by a string in the sky. He flew straight towards Shi Changxiao. His body hadn't even reached him when his legs suddenly kicked like a storm. Venerable Mei's real target wasn't Li Ju Tian. It was the great master of life and death, Shi Changxiao. Shi Changxiao was the biggest threat to him on the ground. He was the only one among the three on the ground who hadn't sustained any injuries. It was clear that Venerable Mei wanted to give this uninjured person the same treatment as the other two. Shi Changxiao's face turned misty. His eyes seemed to have turned petrified. Even his black pupils seemed to have turned white. He shouted loudly and punched out with both his fists. It was a head-on collision, Shi Changshao couldn't retreat because Lei Wu Bei was standing behind him. Lei Wu Bei would have suffered if he had retreated. In fact, Lei Wu Bei had just been injured. So, he wouldn't have had the strength to fight back if he'd been hit by this move. Venerable Mei's 2 kicks had caused the air to vibrate and ripple. They weren't ordinary kicks. The 4-man battle formation would be broken if Lei Wu Bei were to be knocked out of the fight. Then, the 3 of them would be defeated. Therefore, Shi Changshao could only choose to face it head-on. Bang! Venerable Mei's first kick landed on Shi Changshao's fist. Shi Changshao's entire body shook. He hastily withdrew his fist. He wanted to disperse the force of the kick. He wanted to throw another punch. However, Venerable Mei's second kick landed on Shi Changshao's fist before he could withdraw it. Shi Changshao was startled. He hastily raised his left fist, and took advantage of the fact that his body hadn't been knocked back yet. However, Venerable Mei's third kick had already landed on his right fist before his left hand could reach its target. It was accompanied by a thunderous force. It was still the same fist. There was almost no pause in between these 3 consecutive kicks. It seemed as if Venerable Mei had grown 3 feet to attack at the same time. Moreover, each kick was stronger than the previous one. Shi Changshao's body was on the verge of collapse. He couldn't help but take a step back. His left fist finally arrived at this moment. However, Venerable Mei's left leg, which had been waiting for a long time, also kicked out. Venerable Mei's body hadn't yet landed on the ground. Bang! His left fist and Venerable Mei's left foot collided with each other. A loud sound was heard. Then, the scene of his right fist replayed itself. He kicked 3 times in succession. Venerable Mei's legs were separated like a pair of scissors. However, each of his kicks was as heavy as a mountain. Shi Changshao felt a sweet taste in his mouth. He felt as if his internal organs had been shaken. He staggered back. He felt an itch in his nose. Then, a thin wisp of blood spurted out. "I've finally sustained internal injuries." Lei Wu Bei didn't disappoint the opportunity that Shi Changshao had created by risking his injuries. Lei Wu Bei's body flashed like a ghost. The long blade in his hand pierced through Venerable Mei's black robe with an irresistible force. Lei Wu Bei didn't have the time to rejoice at the success of his attack. However, he suddenly discovered that there was a feeling of emptiness after he had pierced through the robe. Lei Wu Bei's heart stirred. However, he felt as if something had blocked him. Then, he saw Venerable Mei's left hand stretch out of the black robe. His palm firmly grasped the blade's edge. Then, he ferociously pushed it forward. Her hand gripped the blade of the godly weapon. She grabbed the serrated edge of the blade. However, it didn't seem as if there was any hindrance to it. Then, Li Ju Tian and the solitary falcon pounced forward in a frenzy. One of them was in front, and the other was behind. Venerable Mei grasped the blade with her left hand. She took advantage of the fact that Lei Wu Bei was trying to cut her hand by twisting the blade. She bent her index finger, and flicked it 3 times against the direction of the force of the blade. Then, Venerable Mei's body fell to the ground. Her black robe fluttered behind her like an oversized iron plate. Then, she pushed it towards Li Ju Tian's back. Her 2 hands changed into thousands of palm shadows in an instant. The wind and clouds whistled as 100 palms converged to form a lustrous white triangle. It seemed as if they were carrying a vast and mighty momentum. Then, the solitary eagle was hit high into the sky. Venerable Mei had used her fingers to flick Lei Wu Bei's blade 3 times. However, Lei Wu Bei felt as if his heart had been struck by 3 loud bangs. It felt as if someone had taken an iron hammer and pounded it 3 times on his chest. Lei Wu Bei's vision blurred and he fell into a trance. However, he couldn't control his body. Venerable Mei's strong wind had pushed him to one side, and had blocked Shi Changzhao's way. Lei Wu Bei's treasured blade had turned into a pile of broken pieces of iron. Then, a crisp sound was heard as it fell to the ground. Only the hilt of the blade was left in Lei Wu Bei's hand. This godly weapon was hard to find in the world. But it had turned into a pile of scrap iron because of the strength of a few fingers. Lei Wu Bei's heart was grief-stricken. He was dumbfounded. This blade had already started to show some slight cracks during the fight with the Snake King. Lei Wu Bei knew about this, but he didn't care too much about it. He felt that he could easily repair the blade as long as he could survive this battle with the help of his Xian cultivation. Chapter 366. On the 31st. I don't know if I'll be able to write in the next few days. So, I've decided to put the 2 chapters on the 31st in the wee hours of the morning to give myself some pressure. In any case, I can't just play around on the last day of the month. Hee. I'll write as much as I can in addition to these 2 chapters. As for the first, I'll work overtime. The saber hadn't been completely destroyed by Venerable Mei's hands. In fact, Venerable Mei had joined forces with Lei Wu Bei's Xian art to destroy it in one fell swoop. This was because Venerable Mei's left hand had turned to the right when she had flicked those 3 fingers. But Lei Wu Bei had turned to the left against her strength. So, Venerable Mei's finger had been imbued with a supreme Xian strength, and she had flicked it 3 times at the right time. The strength of a venerable master and a great master had been applied to the saber at the same time. What kind of heavenly weapon could resist the joint pressure of these 2 forces? The answer was none. At least, Lei Wu Bei's saber couldn't. 3 forces had been applied to one point at the same time. Therefore, the saber had turned into scrap metal. Therefore, the cold-blooded Great Master's saber had been destroyed by the joint forces of Venerable Mei and him. Venerable Mei clenched his left hand into a fist. A thin line of blood flowed down his fist. His hand was a Xian beast's body. So, it was exceptionally tough. But, he was still made of flesh and blood. So, he had been holding the saber's edge the entire time. So, he had sustained some injuries. However, this injury was insignificant compared to the price that Shi Changshao and Lei Wu Bei had paid. It was too insignificant. That was because this blow had sealed the victory. Lei Wu Bei had been in a daze for only a moment. But Venerable Mei's body had quickly fallen to the ground. So, he had managed to avoid Li Ju Tian's all-out attack. Then, he had slid towards Lei Wu Bei like a slide. Then, he had ruthlessly kicked Lei Wu Bei's shins. Lei Wu Bei would have had to change his name to the Crippled Great Master if that kick had landed on him. He could definitely break both of his legs. Lei Wu Bei turned pale with fright. He lifted his right foot and his body spun twice. Then, he flashed 3 feet away. But he immediately regretted it, because behind him was Shi Changshao, whom he had just blocked. Venerable Mei had chased away Lei Wu Bei with his 2 kicks. But, he had then welcomed Shi Changshao. His movements were similar to that of a black dragon twisting around a pillar. Then, his legs shrouded Shi Changshao like raindrops. Shi Changshao was startled by this sudden attack. His line of sight had been blocked by Lei Wu Bei a moment ago. He knew that the situation was urgent. But, he didn't know that Venerable Mei was close at hand. Lei Wu Bei's dodge had exposed him to Venerable Mei's attack. He was in a fluster as he tried to parry the attacks. He was about to throw caution to the wind. However, he saw that Venerable Mei had stood up at some point in time. Then, her palm came crashing down like Mount Tai. He didn't have enough time to urge his martial power. Moreover, he couldn't retreat. Shi Changshao clenched his teeth. He closed his eyes and went forward to meet the attack. A burst of explosive sounds were heard. Then 2 bangs were heard. Shi Changshao's shoulders were hit, and he was sent rolling like an embroidered ball. Venerable Mei retreated at lightning speed. He crossed the distance of 8 feet in a flash. Solitary Eagle's attack fell on empty air. Then, he arrived in front of Li Ju Tian. Then, he clashed with the red-eyed Li Ju Tian 3 more times. He blocked Li Ju Tian's possible escape route. He clashed with his 3 palms. This was simply bullying. Venerable Mei hadn't suffered any injuries. Li Ju Tian, on the other hand, had sustained serious internal and external injuries. The consequences of these 3 palms could be imagined. Li Ju Tian's body was sent flying like an embroidered ball. Blood spurted out of his mouth like a fountain. Li Ju Tian's broken bones had been forcibly sealed by his Xian's strength. But they had completely disintegrated. He looked like a human-shaped blood hedgehog. Thin arrows of blood were shooting out of his pores. Venerable Mei raised her long sleeves, and a black cloth wrapped around Li Ju Tian's severely injured body like a bolt of lightning. Then, she threw him up into the air. Her movements were perfect, and coincided with the solitary falcon's 3rd move of the 9 stances of the Phantom Falcon. This move was Solitary Eagle's most powerful killing move. It was also the move that Solitary Eagle had the most thorough understanding of. He was about to take advantage of this move. But he hadn't expected that Li Ju Tian would be thrown into his hands in grief and indignation. Li Ju Tian opened his mouth, and spat out an arrow of blood towards his face. Solitary Eagle was shocked. He hastily withdrew his move, and dodged the arrow of blood. Then, he caught Li Ju Tian's body with both hands. He moved 30 feet in the air like a bolt of lightning to avoid Venerable Mei's next move. Venerable Mei had thrown Li Ju Tian into the air. So, how could he not have a purpose? Therefore, Solitary Eagle understood that he had to dodge as quickly as possible. However, Solitary Eagle hadn't thought that his reaction would be so quick. But he was still a step too late. He felt a sharp pain in his lower abdomen. Venerable Mei had struck him with 3 palms. 2 of them had missed, but the 3rd one had missed. Solitary Eagle let out a strange cry, and flew away like a kite with its string cut. He fell to the ground and his face flushed red. He tried to control himself, but failed. He spat out a mouthful of blood, and spat it on Li Ju Tian. Moreover, the Solitary Falcon's Qin Gong had exceeded Master Mei's expectations. However, the Solitary Falcon's Xian Qi had backfired when he had forcibly retracted his attack to catch Li Ju Tian. Moreover, his Xian Qi protection had dropped to a very low level. Moreover, the Solitary Falcon's Xian Qi hadn't been profound to begin with. Therefore, the Solitary Falcon's Xian Qi had been severely injured even though he had only been grazed. Venerable Mei had fought a good battle. So, how could he let go of such a good opportunity? His body flashed and disappeared. He was already in front of Lei Wu Bei when he reappeared. Then, he launched a barrage of attack. Solitary Eagle was flying at an angle at this moment. Li Ju Tian's injuries had worsened. Shi Changshao was 15 feet away. So, it would be tantamount to fighting the cold-blooded Great Master Lei Wu Bei alone for the next few breaths. Lei Wu Bei had just been injured, and his treasured saber had just been destroyed. So, his fighting spirit was at its most dispirited. He couldn't help but be frightened when he saw that Venerable Mei wanted to fight him alone. So, he desperately tried to resist, and quickly retreated. Bang! 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 The ground was suddenly covered in dust. It was so dark that one couldn't even see his own fingers. Shi Changshao had just arrived and wanted to help, but he could only see 2 blurred figures in the thick fog. Moreover, these 2 people were wearing black clothes, so it was impossible to tell which one was Venerable Mei and which one was Lei Wu Bei. He hesitated for less than half a second. Then, the sound of a beating was heard. Then, Lei Wu Bei let out a muffled groan of pain. Then, a person's shadow spun and fell down. It was Lei Wu Bei. Blood was gushing out of Lei Wu Bei's mouth. His right arm was strangely bent at a right angle. It was obvious that the fracture of his right arm was quite serious. Venerable Mei had been merciful and hadn't killed him. Lei Wu Bei's arm would have been turned into dust if she hadn't been merciful. Who knew where it would have flown away to? The outcome of the battle was clear at a glance. The 4 great masters had been defeated by the Lord of Tian Fa. It could be said that Venerable May's victory had been exceptionally clean. In fact, the four great masters hadn't even had time to use their ultimate move. But the outcome had been clear. In fact, any one of these four people would have been able to change the outcome of the battle if they had used their ultimate move. They wouldn't have been able to defeat Venerable May. But it would have been a lot better than the current outcome. That was because Venerable May's world cage could only be used against one person at a time. And it would have been even more difficult to use it against a great master. Therefore, the moment he used the heaven and earth cage, although the enemy he was facing couldn't move, it was the most dangerous moment for him. Therefore, Venerable May couldn't use the world cage. In fact, he didn't dare to. But people cherish their lives. Moreover, this battle was only a battle of victory and defeat. It wasn't a battle of life and death. And the price of losing wasn't very high either. The only one who would have had to pay a painful price was the Shuehun Manor. And it didn't have much to do with the other great masters. Li Ju Tian wasn't willing to sacrifice himself to the enemy. So, how could the other three great masters do the same? Therefore, this kind of result was not too surprising. Venerable May waved her long sleeves. Then, she rolled up like a cloud. A gust of wind rose up, and the dust in the field disappeared without a trace. Venerable May's tall figure was revealed. She was wearing a large black robe. She stood in the middle of the field. Her black robe fluttered in the wind. She was looking at the field with disdain. Suddenly, a person in the crowd took a deep breath and cried out in shock, Look at that field!" Everyone hastily looked, and they couldn't help but take a deep breath. The entire field was made of the strongest granite, and a layer of it had been shoveled off within a radius of 10 feet. In fact, it was 3 feet high. It wouldn't be difficult to shovel off such a layer. In fact, any great master would have been able to do it. But the problem was that they hadn't seen any rocks fluttering in the air. So, how did this layer of rocks disappear? Did they grow wings and fly away? They didn't know that the 5 great masters weren't fighting for their lives, but they were using their strongest skills, and their supreme Xian techniques were surging in all directions. So, they were scraping off layer by layer. And more rocks were being scraped off as the fight became more and more intense. Furthermore, all of them had silently turned into mist and disappeared. And this was the result of Venerable May trying her best to control it. Otherwise, this small mountain would have been flattened if the Xian power of the 5 great masters had been allowed to develop at full strength. Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng sighed at the same time. They had foreseen this outcome, but they hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. Even Solitary Eagle, Lei Wu Bei, and Shi Changshao hadn't expected this. Shi Changshao and Lei Wu Bei stood in a daze. Their expressions changed. Solitary Eagle placed Li Ju Tian on the ground. He then turned around and walked a few steps. He wanted to say something, but he didn't say anything in the end. His face had suddenly turned red. The 4 great masters had besieged them, but they had suffered such a crushing defeat. How could these 4 great masters, who boasted that they were at the peak of the world, accept such a result? Today's battle hadn't only represented the complete defeat of the allied forces of the continent. Moreover, the prestige of the 4 great masters had also suffered a huge blow. Chapter 367. How many people will know who Venerable May is once today's matter gets out? Not many people in the entire continent know this name. But the 4 great masters are well known in the world. Won't they be ridiculed wherever they go in the future? Look, this is the guy with an undeserved reputation. He's usually arrogant and looks down on people. But the 4 of them were defeated by a nobody. The 3 great masters almost wanted to dig a hole in the ground and hide in it. We can't afford to lose this face. We admit defeat in today's battle. Venerable May's Xian skills are unrivaled. We are convinced. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Lei Baoyu took a deep breath and broke the awkward silence. Admit defeat? No problem. But don't forget my 3 conditions. From today onwards, Tian Fa Forest is a forbidden area for you people. Venerable Mei stretched out his hand and pointed at the people from all the influential families in the continent. He snorted and said, "If one of them comes in, I'll exterminate his entire family. Then, I'll bring 10,000 people with me. I want to see if anyone has the guts to do so. Since we've lost, the 3 conditions that Venerable Mei had mentioned must be fulfilled." Lei Baoyu's smile gave the crowd a feeling that this Zijin protector of the elusive world of immortals did not care about the outcome of this battle. He continued, "But there's one more thing that I must inform Venerable Mei since the outcome of this battle has been decided." "What is it?" Venerable Mei Lengling asked. 3 years later, on the night of the full moon in the 7th month, the battle will be held in the 3 Holy Lands. Our palace master is looking forward to the Tian Fa Saint King's presence. Lei Baoyu laughed and said, "For the past 500 years, the Tian Fa Forest has always been ranked last, and the Holy King has also been in closed-door training for 500 years. I think it's about time for him to come out. I hope Venerable Mei can tell me about this. In addition, our palace lord asked me to bring a message to Venerable Mei. If the Tian Fa Saint King does not appear this time, and the Tian Fa Forest is defeated again, then from now on, the name Tian Fa Forest will be removed. From now on, there will only be 3 Holy Lands. There will be no more Tian Fa Forest." Venerable Mei shuddered. He gritted his teeth and said, "Is this the real reason why you're here today? What judge? It's all an excuse. Is that hypocrite of your palace master finally running out of patience? Don't forget that the war for seizing the heavens is coming. At that time, without the Tian Fa Forest, will your palace lord be able to bear the responsibility? This matter will be decided by the palace lord." Bu Kuangfeng narrowed his eyes. 2 rays of Lengling's cold light shot out from his eyes. "Venerable Mei, do you think that with the current strength of Tian Fa, you will be able to play a role in the war for seizing the heavens without a Saint King? No matter how useless we are still better than the 2 of you trash." Venerable Mei was so angry that his emotions were somewhat unstable. He didn't want to talk nonsense with them anymore. He waved his hand and said, "Let's collect some interest first." A clear cry of a crane was heard in midair. A black shadow descended at a speed faster than the speed of sound, and rushed into the midst of the Shui Hun Manor's troops like lightning. Judging from his position, he must have been hiding in the sky for a long time. Jun Moxie suddenly realized why he hadn't seen Long Crane since the start of the war. So that's how it is. Li Tingyun was squatting in front of his father with tears and snot streaming down his face. He was panic-stricken and didn't know what to do. He had always relied on his father's prestige to run amok. So, it seemed as if the sky had collapsed when he saw that his father had sustained such serious injuries. He didn't know what to do for a moment. Li Ju Tian was seriously injured and couldn't move. But, his life wasn't in danger. His breathing was weak, and he closed his eyes to rest. He had already lost face. So, preserving his life and restoring his strength as soon as possible had become his top priority. However, a powerful wind-breaking sound was suddenly heard, and a black shadow came down with a schwa sound. The remaining experts of the Shui Hun Manor cried out in alarm, and attacked at the same time. However, that shadow didn't try to dodge, and took everyone's attack head-on. Then, it grabbed Li Tingyun with its huge claws, and soared into the sky without stopping. It flew dozens of feet in an instant, and a few iron-like feathers fluttered down from the sky. Li Ju Tian's eyes widened in anger. He suddenly sat up despite his serious injuries, and shouted, "Yun-er!" Everyone cried out in alarm, "Crane King!" It was the 3rd king of the Tian Fa Forest, the Crane King, Long Crane. He had revealed his true form at this time. He was holding Li Tingyun with his sharp claws, and was floating in the air. Li Tingyun had been given a good name ever since he was born. But he had never been able to soar in the clouds. However, he had truly soared in the clouds today. However, he had always lived a life of luxury. He had always done things his own way, and had always been domineering. So, when had he ever experienced such a thrilling experience? He had indeed soared in the clouds. But he was so scared that his lower body became anxious. He could only cry out, "Father, save me." Then, he couldn't control himself. His front part spurted out, and his back also spurted out. The entire sky was filled with a stench in an instant. The people below covered their noses and dodged. Li Tian's heart turned cold. He suddenly remembered the bet he had with the Tianfa forest. He couldn't care less about his serious injuries. He couldn't care less about his face either. So, he turned to Lei Baoyu and shouted, "Brother Lei, for the sake of this Li's feelings, and for the sake of this Li's tireless efforts for the immortal palace, I ask Brother Lei to save my son." He was the second great master of the Tianfa forest. So, saying these words was no different from kneeling down and begging for mercy. Lei Baoyu hesitated for a moment. He looked at the Venerable Mei, but didn't open his mouth to speak. He had thought that the matter was over, and he had already offended the Venerable Mei with his words. So, how could he put down his face and plead for leniency? His nose would be smeared in the face if he were to open his mouth. So, how could Lei Baoyu afford to lose face in front of the world's heroes? Moreover, he represented the supreme hermitage. And that was even more unacceptable. Li Tian's eyes slowly turned into despair. It seemed as if he had aged a few decades. The once illustrious second great master of the Tianfa forest hadn't been so disheartened even when he had suffered a heavy blow from the Venerable Mei. In fact, he had only shown grief and indignation. But his only son's life was in the hands of others, and he was powerless to do anything about it. Lei Baoyu, you went back on your word. You promised that you'd protect my son. Li Tian let out a soft groan. Then, he suddenly opened his eyes and spoke in a fierce tone, "I swear to the heavens that I'll slaughter everyone here if my son meets with misfortune today. I'll exterminate his entire family." A long and loud cry was heard in the sky. Long Crane laughed and said, "My 3-month wish has finally been fulfilled today." Suddenly, he waved his right wing, and Li Tingyun screamed. His blood swirled in the air. Li Tingyun's legs were severed from his thighs and fell to the ground. Li Tian's blood flowed out of his liver as he screamed. It was unknown where he got the strength from, but he suddenly turned over and stood up. "My Li Tian's old tears streamed down his face. But who could be blamed for this? Li Tingyun wouldn't have been able to act so tyrannically and domineeringly if Li Tian hadn't been so arrogant and willful. He had even tried to snatch someone else's wife. How could a young master of an aristocratic family do that? Moreover, Li Tian was aware of his son's unbearable behavior. But he hadn't tried to stop it. Instead, he had blindly aided the tyrant, and had vowed to fulfill his son's wishes. In the end, Li Tian had to bear the greatest responsibility for Li Tingyun's miserable fate. Is the second great master that amazing? Is there really no one in this world who dares to provoke him? Li Tingyun's blood-soaked thighs had revealed Li Tian's biggest mistake to the world. Suddenly, at this moment, a strange change occurred. A golden light flashed, and 2 exquisite throwing knives suddenly appeared in front of Li Tian. One was aimed at his throat, and the other was aimed at his heart. There were many experts present at the scene, but no one was able to find out where those 2 flying knives had come from. Moreover, no one was able to find out the identity of the person who had thrown those knives. However, everyone understood the intention of the person who had thrown those knives. Li Tian must die. The throwing knives arrived in front of Li Ju Tian's eyes in the blink of an eye. Li Ju Tian roared in anger as he raised his hand to block. One of the throwing knives was deflected, and the other pierced deep into the muscles of his arm. He was a famous great master of his generation. He had copper skin and iron bones, and was invincible. No one in the world could stop him. However, the remaining strength in his body wasn't enough to evade a small throwing knife. Who? Li Ju Tian faced upwards and roared. Who wants to kill me? Come out if you have the guts. This was the question that everyone present wanted to ask. Who wants to kill Li Ju Tian? Who released those throwing knives? It was undeniable that there were many people present who wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to kill Li Ju Tian. Li Ju Tian had shouted, I, Li Ju Tian, swear to the heavens that I will slaughter everyone here if my son suffers any misfortune today. I will exterminate his entire family. These words were a threat to everyone present. Perhaps everyone had the intention to kill Li Ju Tian. But no one dared to take action in front of so many people. Moreover, no one dared to kill Li Ju Tian in front of so many people. After all, the remaining strength of the Shui Hun Manor was very weak. However, it was still much stronger than an ordinary force. Not many people would dare to rashly poke the hornet's nest. So, they could only do it secretly if they wanted to. However, the person who had brazenly released those throwing knives was obviously impatient. Or perhaps, he didn't put the heroes of the world in his eyes. Along with a deep and heavy pressure that was as shocking as a mountain, everyone's heart trembled. Chapter 368. I'm at Jinan Airport, just got off the plane. I'll upload these 2 chapters first, lest the brothers get anxious. Li Ju Tian, I want to kill you. The black-robed man stood in the air as he spoke up in a heavy tone. Then, he stretched out a leg and from a height of several hundred zhang, as though he was walking down a flight of stairs, he walked down step by step with his hands behind his back and his head slightly raised. Everyone was shocked. Walking in the air as if walking on flat ground. Even the Beast King of Tian Fa, the Flying Beast King, Long Crane doesn't have such a miraculous ability. This person's Xian Qi had obviously reached an indescribably profound level. Li Ju Tian's eyes darkened, and he fell to the ground with a thump. He had jumped up like the last radiance of a setting sun. Now that he had seen such a shocking and unparalleled technique, he knew that even if he had a complete victory, he would still be no match for his opponent. This person in front of him was even more terrifying than Tian Fa's Venerable Mei. Much more terrifying. Li Ju Tian had lost his will to fight. He lowered his head and asked in a low voice, Why? Why? Are you asking for a reason? Didn't you always say that those with bigger fists are right? The mysterious black-robed man snorted coldly and said, There are some people you can't afford to offend. I can't afford to offend you. If you anger him, you will have to pay the corresponding price. Understand? Understood. Li Ju Tian raised his desolate head and spoke in a low voice, I don't expect to live. But I want to know who I've offended. Who did you offend? The mysterious black-robed man laughed coldly and said, Do you know why Tian Fa's Xian beasts would ruin your plans? Why didn't they attack the person you wanted to harm? Don't you find it strange that so many unreasonable things have happened recently? It's you. So it was you who stopped the Xian beast tide from attacking Jun Wui. A light flashed in Li Ju Tian's mind, and he immediately guessed it. But he didn't dare to believe it. So, he was tongue-tied as he asked, The Jun family? You did this for the Jun family? As soon as these words came out, everyone present burst into an uproar. Even the Jun family's Jun Wui was among them. His mouth was also wide open. Since when did our Jun family have such a powerful backer? How come I didn't know about it? However, the other people were looking at Jun Wui with only one kind of expression in their eyes, I'm so jealous. It turns out that the Jun family, which has always kept a low profile, actually has such an earth-shattering character hidden behind them. I can't provoke from the June. I can't, the June family, a puny Li Ju Tian can't afford to provoke them. I have. The mysterious black-robed man's sharp eyes slanted as he finished speaking. He then looked at the people from the Silver Blizzard City. Xiao Buyu and the others suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. The black-robed man laughed coldly and said, "As for the rest of you, there's no need to panic. As long as you don't make me unhappy, I don't have much interest in finding trouble with you. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor." Ha ha! The black-clothed masked man laughed sinisterly as he looked at Xiao Buyu and the others. There was a clear warning in his eyes. Xiao Buyu forced a smile and said, "Your Excellency clearly distinguishes between gratitude and grudges. This Xiao admires you." The black-robed man snorted and said, "Clearly distinguishing between gratitude and grudges? Not necessarily. Watch me play a little trick." Li Ju Tian stood motionless in the void. However, a mass of pitch-black flames emerged from his body and wrapped around Li Ju Tian's body. The black-robed man chuckled and spoke in a nonchalant manner, "Li Ju Tian, you're a failure as a great master. But you're undoubtedly a success as a great master." Everyone could vaguely hear the formerly glorious second paragon let out a short, terrified shriek. Then, the black-robed man waved his hand and picked up something. Then, a golden light flashed, and 2 throwing knives fell into his hand. Venerable Mei suddenly shouted, "Wait!" She could see that the black-robed man was holding the Panther King Xiandan. However, she suddenly realized something after she had shouted. The Xiandan was inside Li Ju Tian's body. So, why was it suddenly taken out? And why is it in the hands of this black-robed man? Could it be? The black-robed man snorted and ignored her. Then, he looked around with a sharp gaze. It seemed as if he was giving a warning. It seemed as if he was bidding farewell. Then, he turned around and took a step forward. His entire body suddenly disappeared as he took that step. He disappeared just like that. It seemed as if there was an invisible door in front of him. He took a step forward and the door disappeared again. Then, no one in the world could see him anymore. But, how is this possible? The tens of thousands of people were left speechless. In fact, even the drop of a needle could be heard. Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng looked at each other, and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Then, someone suddenly shouted after a long time, "Li Ju Tian, he." Everyone was startled. They gathered around, and saw that there was nothing left of Li Ju Tian's original position. There was only a small pile of ash left behind. The great master Li Ju Tian had turned into a pile of ashes in the blink of an eye due to the burning of that strange black flame. What kind of skill is this? Even Venerable Mei was so shocked that her eyes were wide open. She hadn't even noticed that the Snake King had arrived in front of her. "Big brother." The Snake King looked at her bashfully and said, "That man, his butt was very big." Venerable Mei was startled. She asked, "What?" "His butt is very big." The Venerable Mei didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she shook her head. Then, she jokingly said, "Snake King, that's a man. Why are you so concerned about his butt?" The Snake King's face turned red. He snorted and turned away. The Venerable Mei smiled, and no longer thought about this matter. But she was very puzzled. What is the origin of this mysterious black-robed man? I don't have any impression of such a strong person in my memory. But how can this person be a nobody if he possesses such a world-shaking power? She racked her brains, but couldn't figure it out. So, she couldn't help but feel at a loss. However, she couldn't imagine that this mysterious man who had suddenly appeared and intimidated everyone was the same June Moxie who had been spanked by her a moment ago. And the reason why the Qian Sun Serpent Queen could see that this man's but was different from an ordinary person's was because Venerable May had spanked it himself. So, how could it not be abnormal? The power of the world cage that had surrounded June Moxie disappeared after the Venerable May had gone into battle. So, June Moxie had finally regained his ability to move. So, he took advantage of the fact that everyone was paying attention to the fight between the four great masters and the Venerable May. So, he couldn't wait to move. Then, he quietly slipped into the Hong Jun pagoda. The first thing he did was to rub his buttocks anxiously. It was very painful, especially in such an indecent place, however. He saw that Li Ju Tian and the others had been defeated. June Moxie hadn't expected that things would happen so quickly. He had activated the art of unlocking the heavens' fortune. But the swelling on his buttocks couldn't be removed in such a short time. So, he had no choice but to drag his cumbersome buttocks and flee. He had gotten rid of Li Ju Tian in a few words. Then, he had fled in a panic. However, the Snake King had also noticed the abnormality of his buttocks because of her sharp eyes. Jun Mo Xie had not expected that his domineering appearance this time would leave such an unforgettable impression in the hearts of these experts. Most of the people present here were the great masters and Shen Xian. Tian Xian's Earth Xian cultivation was a minority. Most of the people present here were at the Gold Xian level, Yu Xian's level, except for the great masters and Shen Xian. Such a level could be considered as an expert in the secular world. But they had been reduced to ants today. They were truly ants. Each and every one of these experts was a legend. And each and every one of them was a character that they had to look up to. They had felt that they were unreachable when they had first arrived in the southern Heaven City. And they had felt that this trip had been worthwhile. However, the four great masters had been defeated by someone else even though they had joined hands. Moreover, two of the great masters had appeared at the same time. They were world-shaking swordsmen, the great masters of the storm and the storm. What a resounding name, but it turned out that he had gone to the elusive world of immortals to be a protector. The name Hermitage had suddenly appeared in front of everyone. But this was the first time that most of them had heard of this name. No one had ever heard of such a legend before. And this had made everyone even more puzzled. This mystery had made everyone feel as if they were in a fog. They didn't understand, but they knew that this hermitage was the pinnacle of strength in this world. This could be seen from Li Ju Tian's attitude. Moreover, the two great masters were Hermitage's protectors. So, what did this mean? Of course, the Venerable May had defeated the four great masters. So, everyone thought that he was the embodiment of the world's strongest expert. However, they hadn't expected that a mysterious black-robed man would appear at such a critical juncture. This man seemed even more powerful than the Venerable May. Moreover, he had killed the great master Li Ju Tian with a snap of his fingers. These events had happened in succession in a very short period of time. And they had repeatedly attacked everyone's psychological endurance. In fact, it was almost too much for their eyes to take in. There's always a higher mountain. The same thought emerged in everyone's mind at the same time. It didn't matter if they were the people who had wandered the world, lived in seclusion in the mountains, or belonged to the aristocratic families. However, they were shocked at this moment. Moreover, they had been complacent and proud of their status. They were ashamed of themselves. What do I count as in front of these people? It seems that I'm not even a joke. I'm a frog at the bottom of a well. Another thing was that most of the people present at the scene, Li Ju Tian and Li Tingyun of the Shuehun Manor, had plotted against Jun Wui. But most of them had secretly participated in it. So, they had turned a blind eye to it. However, the Jun family's situation had turned around. Not only had no one died, but this mysterious man was obviously the Jun family's backer. What does this mean? Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng didn't dare to provoke this man. Even the Venerable May had misgivings about this man. But this man was the backer of the June family that everyone had plotted against. Everyone panicked as this thought emerged in their minds. What if the June family retaliates? Suddenly, everyone had the same thought in their minds. We must be on good terms with the June family. We must report this matter to the family once we return. We must come up with a plan as soon as possible. Then, we will rush to the Tianxiang city, and strive to gain the June family's favor. Don't retaliate against us. We can't afford to provoke you with your strength. Of course, there were still some thick-skinned people who had begun to make friends with Junwui. The third Master June pondered for a moment. Then, a large group of people swarmed around him like a group of flies. All kinds of flattering words came one after another, and all kinds of praises and flattery poured into Junwui's ears in an endless torrent. The straightforward Junwui felt a headache coming on as he listened to them. But he had no choice but to deal with them carefully. It had to be said that such a shocking news would cause a huge shock if it were to spread out. The June family's status and safety could be said to be unshakable at this time. No one was willing to risk the wrath of such a powerful expert to deal with the June family. It didn't matter who it was. However, the Xiao family from the Silver Blizzard City were the most panic-stricken. Xiao Buyu's face sank. He had suddenly felt an enormous pressure. Will the Silver Blizzard City be able to withstand the revenge of that mysterious man with its strength? I can't say for sure. That man had said that every debt has its debtor. But how could Xiao Buyu not understand the meaning of that warning and the flavor of hatred from his decades of experience? The current situation was that the mysterious man wanted Jun Wu-yi to seek justice on his own. Everyone could understand this layer of meaning. But the problem is, what will the Xiao family do if Jun Wu comes to seek revenge? Every debt has its debtor. The saying, every debt has its debtor, would be effective if Jun Wu were to get rid of him by accident. Then, it would be the turn of that mysterious man. But do you think that you'll have to treat Jun Wu like a baby in the palm of your hand? Do you think that he'll melt in your mouth? Do you think that he'll melt? What the fu *k is this? Xiao Han looked at the encircled Jun Wu, and he suddenly felt suffocated in his heart. In fact, it felt as if he was about to die. This mortal enemy, this person that he hated, this person that he dreamed of killing, this enemy that was like a toy in his heart, had now reached such a glorious moment. Even if he wanted to deal with him, his family would definitely reconsider. Even without the strict order from the city lord, his family would probably not offend the mysterious black-robed man for him. Then, what should he do? Yaoer, that's mine. Mine. Xiao Han's eyes were filled with madness. Suddenly, his body swayed and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He stubbornly stood there, his eyes fixed on Junwui. His gaze became colder and colder, crazier and crazier. Junwui, I don't care what backing you have, I'm going to kill you. I will kill you. Long Crane let go of Li Tingyun's crippled body, and he cried out in alarm as he fell from a height of more than 100 meters. However, Li Tingyun had fallen from a height of over 100 meters. The people below scattered in all directions with a loud bang, and created a large open space. At least 1,000 people would have rushed forward to catch Li Tingyun if he had fallen earlier. But Li Tingyun had become a hot potato now. Who would dare to catch him? Who would be willing to catch him? Bang! Li Tingyun's body fell heavily on the stone ground, and a large amount of blood splashed out. His entire body had turned into a pile of meat paste. One of his arms had been smashed, and his bones had been sent flying. Even his fingers were still attached. This miserable scene caused everyone's heart to pound wildly. Venerable Mei waved his sleeves, turned around and shouted, "Everyone, remember today's conditions. I'll take my leave now, and we'll meet again someday." He didn't mention any names, and he didn't say it to anyone. But Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng knew that these words were meant for the two of them. He spoke in a solemn manner, Venerable May, don't worry. A man's words carry enormous weight. He must accept the consequences of his defeat since he has lost. He won't go back on his words. Venerable May sneered and said, "Who would dare to go back on his words?" His threat was evident in his words. Lei Bao Yu and Bu Quang Feng looked at each other and forced a smile. Venerable May turned his gaze back, and found that June Moxie's shadow had disappeared from the place where he had been standing. It seemed that this guy had slipped away like a mouse once he had eliminated the power of the world cage. She thought for a moment, and then suddenly turned around and walked towards Jun Wui. The people who were surrounding Jun Wui saw her fluttering black robe, and avoided her as if they had seen a ghost. Jun Wui finally heaved a sigh of relief. He felt that his body was sweating. He hadn't changed his expression in the face of a mountain of swords, a forest of swords, a mountain of corpses, and a sea of blood. But he felt that he couldn't breathe in the face of a tide of flattery. He felt that dealing with these people who had looked down on him in such a short period of time was more tiring than fighting a battle. Seeing that Venerable May had come over, Jun Wui smiled and cupped his hands. "Venerable May, what brings you here today? Your nephew's bones are clear, and he is very talented." Venerable May did not beat around the bush, and directly said, "I wish to take him as my disciple. What do you think, General June?" Although Jun Wui was prepared and had guessed her intention, he couldn't help but be surprised when he heard this. Then, he became happy, but he remembered Jun Mosie's strange temper, so he smiled and said, "It's the kid's fortune that the Venerable May has taken a liking to him. I naturally have no objections. However, the Jun family has always been open-minded, and Mosie has always been rather self-disciplined. Moreover, he has his own opinions. If Venerable May really wants this, as long as Mosie agrees, the Jun family will definitely not have a problem." Rather self-disciplined. Venerable May seemed to be stunned for a moment, as if he didn't understand this sentence. There was an obvious sense of disbelief in his tone. Then, he seemed to grit his teeth and laughed. "Not bad, very good. Rather self-disciplined, that's good." He wanted to curse in his heart. That despicable and shameless kid's actions could actually be called rather self-disciplined? Where did this come from? If that's the case, I have my own ways. Venerable May was a little disdainful in his heart. This great general actually dared to lie through her teeth. To think that you would praise your nephew so much. But I wonder where your nephew is? Venerable May was very solemn. It was only because she was about to scold the legendary, honest and decisive blood general in front of her that she forcefully suppressed her temper, or else she would have scolded him. Mosie, he. Jun Wui only remembered after the words left his mouth. "Wasn't Mosie by your side just now?" Your nephew wasn't there when I returned." Venerable May's face didn't even blush as he replied. "I had a pleasant chat with your nephew." Lei Bao Yu and Bu Quang Feng had already arranged for everyone to evacuate while the two of them were talking. Everyone kept quiet out of fear when they saw that the great evil star Venerable May and Jun Wui were having a pleasant chat. They admired the Jun family even more. They didn't dare to disturb them, so they quietly left one after another. The mountaintop had already been emptied by this time. The Xian beasts in the Tian Fa forest had also retreated a long time ago. Only a few beast kings were left to look at Venerable May with concern. The sound gradually faded away, and the mountainous area between the mountain and forest regained its tranquility. Lei Bao Yu chuckled, cupped his fists and said, "Venerable May, beast kings, we will meet again in the future. We two brothers will take our leave now. We will return to the palace to report on our mission." Venerable May nodded slightly. He was about to speak when a majestic figure suddenly rushed out from behind him and shouted, "Hermitage Protector Zi Jin, you're amazing! It won't be too late to leave after you eat my fist." At the same time, the sound of wind rustling in the sky turned into a thunderstorm and fell down. A sharp voice with a sonorous murderous aura shouted, I would also like to experience the power of the elusive world of immortals guardian Z Gene. Bear King, Bear Mountain, and Crane King, Crane soars to the heavens. Everyone on the scene knew that the two kings didn't want to detain or kill Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng. They only wanted to stir up a dispute. How much worse would their Xian cultivation be compared to the legendary Zijin protectors of the elusive land of immortals? In other words, how would the strength of the subordinates of the Tian Fa forest compare to that of the Hermitage protector? Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng had the same thought after they heard Lei Baoyu's inexplicable word. So, how could they let go of this opportunity when they saw that Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng were about to leave? A gentle and graceful silhouette appeared with a whistling sound. It was the Qian Sun Serpent Queen. Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng looked at each other and smiled. They didn't make any moves. The purple gold treasured sword on their waists didn't seem to have moved. But two dazzling rays of light flashed. Suddenly, the sky was filled with specks of starlight. It seemed as if a rainstorm had suddenly started. Then, a strange whoosh sound was heard. It seemed as if a gale had suddenly started to blow. Sand and stones were flying everywhere. The attacks of the three beast kings were sharp. But they found it difficult to move in this rainstorm and gale. The two world-shaking swordsmen, the rainstorm and fierce wind duo, Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng, were worthy of being called the great masters of the previous generation. Their Xian skills were extremely profound, and their coordination was flawless. Moreover, their power had increased by several times. Long Crane rushed to the sky with a clear sound. He then burst into laughter and praised, "You're worthy of the rainstorm and fierce wind duo. I admire you." A whistling sound was heard from Bu Guangfeng's mouth. He then said, "The Tian Fa forest has a well-deserved reputation. We'll meet again after 5 years. Farewell." His voice had already traveled a mile away when he had said the word farewell. The five had only exchanged one move. Then, they had already retreated. It seemed that the 5 of them were fighting 2 against 3. So, it seemed that they were evenly matched. However, the 3 Beast Kings were well aware that the initiative was in the hands of the other party. Hermitage is very powerful. The 3 of them were somewhat surprised. But, Venerable Mei had already anticipated the outcome of this battle. So, he didn't care about it. He frowned and paced back and forth. He was thinking in his heart, "Where did that little bastard June Moxie escape to? Why can't I find him with my spirit sense? What's the reason?" Chapter 369. Jun Wui, Dongfang Wenqing, Xikong and Yi, and the others had also come to bid their farewells. Venerable Mei nodded absent-mindedly. In her eyes, an ordinary Xinxian and Tianxian expert was only a San or a Si. That's all. Venerable Mei didn't want to blow up this matter if it wasn't for the fact that Jun Wui, the 3 Dongfang brothers, and Jun Dashao were involved in this matter. And the Venerable Mei didn't want to make a big deal out of it. She would have been embarrassed if that had happened. So, she wouldn't have even nodded in agreement. So, how could she pay attention to what they were talking about? Her heart was still unsettled. She waited for a long time, and then raised her head. Her eyes were filled with the starry river, and the bright moon in the sky. It's already nighttime. I didn't even realize that such a long time has passed. What was I thinking about that made me so absent-minded? This has never happened before. Why is this happening? She turned her head again, and noticed that there were only 3 people left by her side. All the Xian beasts had quietly retreated under the leadership of the Tiger King and the Lion King. However, she could faintly see dust rising from the depths of the forest. It was the dust that had been stirred up during their retreat. I've been too absent-minded. The retreat of such a large number of Xian beasts would have been accompanied by loud noises, even if it had been quiet and orderly. But I hadn't even noticed it. I've never been in such a state of absent-mindedness in the last 100 years. The Venerable May didn't pay much attention to the allied human forces. They had also retreated by now. Even the corpses on the ground had been taken away. The only exception was Li Ju Tian and his son. One had turned into white ash, and the other had turned into minced meat. The allied forces had simply buried them, and piled them up into a small mound. That small mound was illuminated by the setting sun. Only a piece of white wood that had been cut from a tree was conspicuous. There were some words scribbled on it, the tomb of Li Ju Tian and his son. There were no other words apart from that. A supreme being of a generation, how glorious was he in the past! How arrogant was his way of doing things! In the end, he actually ended up in such a miserable state. It wasn't until he saw the wooden plaque that Venerable May finally came to his senses. He looked at it for a moment, then smiled bitterly and murmured, "So, the second paragon is just like any other beggar who's been frozen or starved to death. He's a nobody." Sighing, he looked around. Only the four of them were left in the vast forest. After more than a month of fighting and killing, the gratitude and grudges had finally come to an end. The heroes of the world who had gathered here finally dispersed and went their separate ways. Everything returned to normal, but some people were missing. The faint smell of blood still lingered in the air, adding a sense of desolation to this large open space. "You just fought with Lei Bao Yu and Bu Quang Feng. How do you feel? You've already fought against the four great supremes who are here today. How does their strength compare to that of the 8 great supremes? I want to know how you feel about our Tian Fa forest and the hermitage?" Venerable May folded his hands behind his back, and looked into the distance as he asked in a leisurely manner. He had asked 3 questions in a row. It seemed like a very ordinary question, but the 3 Xian Beast Kings felt an enormous pressure. "Those 2 men are very powerful, very powerful." Long Crane carefully recalled the situation of the battle. Then, he flattened his long mouth and said, "The strength of any one of them surpasses that of the 4 great supremes who are here today. In fact, they are much stronger than the strongest of the 4 great supremes, Li Ju Tian. The 2 of them have joined hands, and their swords have combined in harmony. So, their might has multiplied. The 3 of us can't defeat them. Even if we were to fight with our bodies, we'd still lose. Moreover, this is an assessment based on the strength they've shown so far. I agree with Third Brother's opinion. Moreover, the Hermitage has revealed the tip of the iceberg in terms of Lei Bao Yu and Bu Quang Feng's strength. I'm afraid that their overall strength is slightly higher than our Tian Fa." Qian Sun Serpent Queen gently stroked her long hair. Her beautiful face had a dignified look on it. "Slightly higher than us? That's too conservative. I don't dare to have such an extravagant hope. I think that they're not just higher than us. In fact, they're far higher than us." Venerable May slowly turned around and spoke up in a bleak tone, "Your progress is too slow. I'm very disappointed." Long Crane and the other 2 Xian Beast Kings lowered their heads with red faces. "One of the 3 Holy Lands is an extremely dangerous place. Tian Fa Forest has declined too much in recent years. Perhaps it will be stripped of the title of an extremely dangerous place in the near future. That kind of humiliation. Hee Big Bear, Long Crane." Venerable May sneered and said, "You 2 have already guaranteed the loss of the Tian Fa's sacred fruit. So, you know what to do if there's no news of this matter after 3 years." Venerable May's tone had become extremely stern. Long Crane and Bear Mountain stood up straight. Their faces were solemn as they said, "Don't worry, Big Brother. We 2 brothers will take responsibility if something goes wrong." Venerable May snorted and said in a low voice, "Do you 2 think that your heads are worth a lot of money?" Everyone was left speechless. How could the heads of the 2 Xian Beast Kings be worthless? But, what would be the point of chopping off their heads if the situation were to change? In fact, they would only be wasting their strength for no reason. So, they didn't know what to say about these 2. Venerable May raised his head, and pondered in silence. The Tian Fa is unsought, and the Xian beast kings return to their roots. Tian Fa's 10,000 years depends on one person's success or failure. What profound meaning is contained in these 4 sentences? The Tian Fa's Xian beast tide had already passed. But the Tian Fa's side was still shrouded in fog, except for the phrase, the Tian Fa is unsought. Venerable May had thought that the Xian beast kings would suffer great losses this time. And he had thought that the Xian beast kings would return to their root. But it seemed that this wasn't the case. The Tian Fa's 10,000 years depends on one person's success or failure. It was even more shrouded in fog. I can't understand it. Oh, what does it mean? Boss, that brat, since you want to take him as your disciple, why don't you? Snake King asked. I naturally have other ways. Venerable May looked into the distance and said slowly, how can I let him escape from my palm so easily? If I don't teach him how to be a good person, wouldn't it be too easy for him? The last few words were extremely cold and gloomy. In fact, it sounded like he was gnashing his teeth in hatred. The 3 Xian beast kings had known him for many years. So, how could they understand their boss's character? They couldn't help but shiver at the same time. They looked at each other in dismay. Does boss want to take a disciple or take revenge? Why does he have such a gloomy and vengeful tone? I'm already on the verge of breaking through. Today's battle has given me an epiphany. If I want to break through the final barrier in one fell swoop, blindly practicing is not the best strategy. I must travel the world. That's the best choice. Venerable May smiled and said, Bear King and Crane King, the 2 of you guard the Tian Fa forest well. Don't go out for a while. Qian Sun and I will go out and have a look in the next 2 years. She sighed after she finished speaking. Venerable May's limpid eyes were filled with confusion and contradiction if one could see through the black cloth that covered her face. Venerable May's eyes were as limpid as the autumn waters. Bear Mountain and Long Crane bowed in acknowledgement. Venerable May stood there quietly. The curtain of night slowly fell, and the biting cold mountain wind started to blow. Venerable May didn't use her Xian Qi to protect her body. She just stood there on the peak of the mountain. Her black robe fluttered behind her, and outlined her curvaceous and exquisite figure. Her figure was infinitely beautiful. One could only vaguely see her silhouette from the side. But it was enough to make anyone feel a certain feeling of peerless elegance, because this vague silhouette alone was enough to make all the women in the world who called themselves beauties feel ashamed of their inferiority. Even though she did not reveal her true appearance, just by standing in the wind, her peerless beauty and elegance had already caused the bright moon in the sky to lose its splendor. The entire sky had turned completely dark. On the peak of the mountain, a graceful and elegant figure was still standing there motionlessly, allowing her peerless elegance to sway in the night wind. A long time passed. Then, someone sighed softly, and a low voice drifted in the wind. What should I do to you? The sharp night wind whistled and carried away the lingering sound of those words. That outstanding and peerless figure seemed to flash for a moment, and then the entire world was filled with darkness. It was as if the sky had already lost its last bit of brightness. Although the sky had already turned dark before this, as long as that figure was here, it would be the dazzling green lotus at the peak of the snowy peak. Now that she had left, she had finally taken away the last bit of scenery high up in the sky. The majority of the people who had returned to the southern heaven city had gradually dispersed. After all, the Allied forces had suffered a crushing defeat. The Shui Han Manor was the strongest force on the continent. Even the second great master Li Ju Tian had been defeated and killed. However, the Shui Han Manor's beasts had returned to the forest. So, they wouldn't cause any harm to the continent. Therefore, the Allied forces had achieved their primary objective. So, no one was idle. So, everyone had their own matters to attend to. However, Jun Wui and the others who had been in the limelight during this battle were frowning. Jun Moxie has disappeared. Da Xiao has mysteriously disappeared. This startling turn of events has made these people very anxious. Solitary Eagle, Dongfang Wenqing, and the others searched everywhere, but couldn't find a trace of him. Jun Wui had no choice but to postpone his return and rest for a few days. What he didn't know was that during the few days he had been resting, the Jun family's reputation had soared to the peak in one fell swoop. Countless Xianqi experts who were interested in attending the meeting had spread the news of the Jun family's power and influence in just a few short days. The Jun family could be considered as a prestigious family. But their greatest prestige came from their military prestige. So, the Jun family couldn't be provoked lightly in the eyes of the ordinary families of the pugilistic world. But that didn't mean that they couldn't be provoked. This was especially true for those families with Sky Xian experts, or even Spirit Xian experts. There weren't many forces that couldn't be provoked. Only the Silver Blizzard City, the Shuehun Manor, and a few others. Chapter 370. Inside the tent, Guan Qing Han supported her chin with her hand. She stared blankly at the flickering candlelight in front of her, and heaved a long sigh. Sister Guan, are you thinking of Brother Emosia? Dugu Xiaoi quietly sat on one side. She hadn't seen this innocent and beautiful girl for a few days. She had obviously lost some weight. Moreover, there was an inexplicable worry on her face. She was inexplicably startled after saying this sentence. Do I want Sister Guan's answer to be yes or no? Moreover, she recalled that she had called Guan Qing Han Sister Guan and Jun Moxie Brother Emosia. Wouldn't that make them a pair? She hastily corrected herself. Are you really thinking of Emosia? Guan Qing Han turned around and smiled warmly. Xiao Yi, why do you ask? What do you want my answer to be? Dugu Xiaoi pouted and said, Of course. Jun's third uncle wants you two to be a pair. If you don't think of him, who else would you think of? No one was optimistic about him in the beginning. I was the only one who chose him. Why is everyone trying to snatch him now? After saying this, she suddenly felt a heartfelt grievance in her heart. Her eyes turned red. Guan Qing Han's bright eyes flickered as she said, Sister Xiao Yi, don't worry. But he has been gone for such a long time. It's really worrying. It's the kind of worry that a sister-in-law would have for a brother-in-law. It's really not for anything else. Dugu Xiaoi pouted even more and said, But you're not his sister-in-law now. You're family. You're close to him. Of course, you don't need to think too much. Humph. This guy casually disappears. When he comes back, I'll make sure to. Suddenly, she rolled her eyes and thought of a brilliant idea. She immediately stopped talking and her face turned red. The more she thought about it, the more she couldn't sit still. After a moment of bashfulness, she hurriedly stood up and said, I'll go out first. I have something to do. As she spoke, she ran out as fast as she could. Guan Qing Han looked at her hurried back in confusion and finally couldn't help chuckling. After laughing, she immersed herself in her own thoughts and sighed again. She looked at the candlelight in confusion and murmured, What should I do? What should I do? I am really sinful. While everyone was worried about Jun Moxie, Jun Daxiao was also in a huge crisis. Jun Moxie had taken a risk and used the flame of primal chaos to deal with Li Jutian. His attack had been successful, and the results had been incredible. In fact, it had turned the second great master Li Jutian into ashes in one fell swoop. However, the backlash from the flame of primal chaos had left Jun Moxie to suffer a fate worse than death. Jun Moxie had killed Li Jutian at the time. Li Jutian didn't have the strength to fight back. However, Jun Moxie was well aware that his every move was being closely watched by the three strongest experts present. Venerable Mei, Lei Baoyu, and Bu Quangfeng. It wouldn't be difficult to kill Li Jutian at that time. But the difficulty lay in the fact that he would have to kill Li Ju Tian under the watchful eyes of so many people. Moreover, such a method would expose his true identity at any time. As long as his methods were not in line with his identity as a super powerhouse, the three of them would not hesitate to make a move and expose his identity. And the Jun family would face a true calamity if that happened. Moreover, there would be no way to save them. However, any effective method would have a high risk of being exposed. Therefore, Jun Moxie had decided to take the risk and use the flame of primal chaos. Jun Moxie had thrown caution to the wind in order to get rid of the Shui Hun manor. Da Xiao had been prepared to bear the backlash of the flame of primal chaos. But he hadn't expected that it would come so quickly. Moreover, it would be so intense. Even his incomparably tough nerves were almost unable to bear it. Jun Moxie had always boasted that his bones were hard. He believed that no punishment could make him say anything he didn't want to say. He was confident that he could withstand any kind of torture. In fact, he would die at worst. In his previous life, when he was training to resist torture, he had endured all the punishments. Under his unyielding character, any kind of punishment was nothing more than a life experience. Therefore, Jun Moxie didn't care about any kind of physical or mental pain. Therefore, he acted as he pleased. He would do whatever he wanted. He would laugh, curse, and play around with life. Or, he would frown and be aloof. He would do whatever he wanted. Because in this world, there is no longer anything that I fear, or dread. Therefore, he was able to talk and laugh with His Majesty the Emperor even though he was a debauchee. Moreover, he dared to curse a supreme expert even though he was a Jade Xian expert. What can you do to me? Even if you can do anything to me, so what? I've endured the most extreme pain in the world. Moreover, I'm not afraid of death. So, what else can I be afraid of? Just like acting tough, one also needed to have strength. Only with strength and good mental fortitude can you act tough. Without strength and good mental fortitude, acting tough is just a joke. A prince could show off to his heart's content in front of the county or the common people. A billionaire could also show off to his heart's content in front of the middle class and the poor. They had no scruples at all. Why? Because no one can threaten them. So, they aren't afraid. Even if they want to brag, they don't need to worry about it. But, can a beggar act tough in front of Supermanly? That's simply unimaginable. Jun Mo Xian naturally had the capital to back up his pretentious act. I'm not afraid of anything. I don't care about anything. So, why can't I? I have the Hong Jun Pagoda. Even if all the experts in the world attack me together, they won't be able to kill me. I have such a strong backing. So, why can't I act tough? I've only cultivated for 3 months. That's comparable to other people's 10 years of hard work. I have such a strong backing. So, why can't I act tough? If I say that I'm the second genius in the world, then who dares to say that they're the first? Therefore, Jun Moxie had always been arrogant. He had always looked down on everyone. He even felt that there was nothing in the world that could threaten him. There was nothing that he needed to be afraid of. He didn't need to have any scruples. But now, he knew that he was wrong. In fact, he was ridiculously wrong. Because there was some pain that even the soul couldn't bear. Not to mention a living person. Jun Mo Xie believed that he would be able to laugh calmly at the pain of his physical body, even if his hands and feet were broken, or his bones were scraped to cure poison. However, the pain of his soul was something that could even torture a great principal golden immortal to the point of collapse. For example, right now, it was the backlash of the flame of primal chaos. He was wrapped up in the thick aura of the Hong Jun Pagoda. He was holding his head and rolling on the ground in agony. He had never imagined that the backlash of the flame of primal chaos would be so overbearing. There were some things that one shouldn't try, even if one had a reason to take the risk. Jun Moxie hadn't felt the slightest bit of discomfort when the flame of primal chaos had first launched its attack. In fact, He had even felt a kind of faintly discernible feeling of floating in the air. However, Jun Moxie had felt his world turn upside down the moment he had killed Li Ju Tian and absorbed the flame of primal chaos back into his body. This included the world of his soul and the world of his consciousness. This kind of extreme pain was so intense that even the Hongjun Pagoda's heaven and earth aura, which could heal any kind of pain, was completely useless against it. That was because the flame of primal chaos was the origin of the world's fire. And it was burning the core of his soul at this moment. Jun Moxie clenched his teeth in agony. His facial muscles had contorted. He felt as if his soul was being pulled out of his body inch by inch. Then, it burned away bit by bit. It seemed as if there was a small flame burning in his heart. It was burning his fragile heart. It was slowly roasting and roasting. But it was still keeping him alive. He was clearly experiencing the cruelest and most unbearable torture. It felt as if there was a fire in his brain that had been extinguished a long time ago. But it had suddenly reignited. Moreover, it had started to burn faster and faster. In fact, it had started to boil in his brain. But he was still conscious. His nerves of pain had been magnified 1,000,000 times. The black robe on his body had been rolled into a ball and stuffed into his mouth. He had chewed it to a pulp. He wanted to faint, but he didn't dare to do so. That was because he would lose consciousness if he fainted. Then, he would suffer the backlash of the flame of primal chaos. And he would end up like Li Ju Tian. That would be akin to shooting oneself in the foot. Therefore, the only thing he could do at this moment was to hold on. He was stubbornly holding on to the last bit of clarity in his mind. Jun Moxie would cease to exist in this world once that bit of clarity disappeared. Moreover, he would cease to exist in any world. Compared to the burning of the flame of primal chaos, the tiger stool, chilly water, 20 poisonous bamboo sticks stuck in the fingers, these kinds of punishments were simply like a drizzle. In fact, it could be said that he had been bitten by a mosquito. And the backlash this time would have been equivalent to having one of his legs smashed. The disparity between the two was enormous. Sweat flowed out of his body like a small river. Then, it evaporated, and turned into a cloud of mist. Ah! Jun Moxie faced upwards and let out a long and loud scream. He stood up and then fell back down. His entire body was stiff like a zombie. Then, his body twisted and contorted on the ground. In fact, it had already violated the limits of the human body. This kind of pain continued for an entire day and night. The dark flame of primal chaos danced cheerfully under the furnace of good fortune. It seemed as if it was cheering for Jun Moxie's suffering. Only the art of unlocking the heavens' fortune persistently operated. It flowed through Jun Moxie's meridians again and again. The thick aura of the Hongjun Pagoda poured into his meridians like a whale. It washed away the impurities in his meridians again and again. The amount of aura that had entered his body this time was far greater than any of the previous times. In fact, it was comparable to the total amount of aura that had entered his body in the past. The rich milky white aura in the air seemed to be being sucked in by a powerful whirlpool. It issued a continuous whooshing sound as it continuously rushed into Jun Moxie's body. It seemed as if there was no end to it. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.